think this is episode 7. Hashtag cancelconor. Let's begin.
What?
Indeed. So, Mr. Geez, I don't even know your last name, actually.
Rizopoulos.
Rizzo.
Call me Rizzo.
Right. Mike Rizzo. Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and start by talking a little bit about yourself, your history, how we know each other, I guess, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. My name is Michael Rizopoulos. About my history. I've been training martial arts for the past 2 years. I guess we'll start there.
Sure.
I come from a normal household.
Not
much to know.
What is normal, though?
Divorced parents at the age of 13, and then, kind of just the typical fallout from that, like the guilt and feeling like you're responsible and that kind of stuff. That was a lot of my teenage years, was feeling that way, and just kind of dealing with that in my family. And so just growing up feeling like I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Basically, feeling like I wasn't good enough for a lot of different things, because that's kind of...
Is that partly because you have siblings sort of thing too that made you also feel that way, or?
Personally, I think it's more to do with my dad and just kind of the way that he was. Okay. I don't really talk to my dad. Haven't talked to my dad since I was 17. Oh,
okay.
And so being raised in an environment where I was expected to be all these different things, like I was expected to be his prodigy, little engineering mathematician genius, as opposed to doing the things that I wanted to do.
Yeah, how dare you?
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to be like an actor and all this really interesting stuff in high school.
Yeah.
Not that much interesting stuff. I wanted to be an actor.
No.
I wanted to get into acting because I love drama. And then I saw carpentry, and I looked at carpentry and I was like, that looks like a good time. So that's kind of what my early life and teenage years were like. And carrying that through into adulthood. I'm just learning now, I guess I could say, how to grow up, how to leave these feelings aside and stop feeling guilty for every little thing and have a little bit of confidence.
Yeah, and blame goes a long way too, right?
Yeah, it does go a long way.
Because it seemed like it matters, because everything that you think is wrong with your life, regardless of how good it is, it's not your fault. But it's is it though? Or did my parents do the best they could with what they had? Because nobody's got a playbook on how life is supposed to go. So.
Oh, exactly. And nobody has a playbook on how to raise kids perfectly. There's tons of books out there on how to raise kids. But yeah. Getting dealt a bad hand can sometimes, give you two choices in life, I guess. It can sometimes really affect the way that you think. Some people are really headstrong. And can move on from that. I can't remember what I was talking about already.
No, but I understand the dynamic of, like you said, feel like you're the reason why your parents got divorced, and that's a very childish thing to think, because it's like, well,
it is.
It's silly, and the thing is, even if your parents are those kind of people that do actually blame you for it, it's still not your fault. It was their choice to have you. Don't blame. It's like you can't blame me for your shit choices.
Right? In my dad's own way, he loved me very much, and I didn't agree with the way that he loved me. So it was just, simply me making the decision at the age of 17 to, not see my father anymore.
Which is probably really healthy, difficult, but healthy.
It was healthy. I think it was healthy, just because the person that he was, and I wasn't raised particularly to have to make the choice between mom and dad. It was really obvious to me who would be the better parent, who would be there to keep me safe. From the get-go when my parents split up, because obviously I haven't talked to my dad since I was 17. Obviously he wasn't a very good person to me, but like I said, he loved me in his own way, the best that he knew how, with what he had, and he just carried over so much trauma from the way that he was born, from the way that he was raised, into trying to raise me and my sister. And that just kind of blew up in his face, because he became super controlling and just so greedy, just doing weird, shady shit. Basically, he can't come to Canada right now because he owes, a lot of wages. He owes a whole bunch of consultants that he had hired out a lot of money, so he ran away. At least this is the story
Yeah, and that's the good version.
Yeah, exactly. That's the good version. There's probably a lot that I don't know in the background that's going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, that's life too, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can't pick your parents.
No,
So.
But you can pick your friend's nose.
Yeah. Yep, and that's far easier. Far more healthy. But I mean, yeah, there's no good way of having a life, because I mean, you look at the kids that are given a lot of opportunity and stuff like that, and it's like, well, when they succeed, it's like, well, they better, and when they fail, it's just like, well, they also have a ton of opportunity to fuck up even harder than the rest of us do.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they have so many more options.
Yeah.
It's where, rest of us, it's like, well, I'll develop a drinking problem, I'm sure, but I might be able to get over that. So it's not like I'm going to have a gambling problem in Vegas. That's never going to be my issue.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where to go with that.
Moving along.
Moving along. Yeah, I don't want to talk about my dad too much.
No, you don't have to, man. It's, well, like you said, if you haven't talked to him in a long time, there's no point in continuing, so.
Yeah, it's not like it hurts me. It's just like there's not much to learn there.
Yeah. Well, and you want to be a man on your own terms anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and, kind of having the responsibility to make the wise decisions to, like, not want to be a fuck up and, like, choose to use drugs or whatever somebody who had a similar past to me would choose to do.
Yeah.
So I'm just thankful that I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Well, that's good, man. I mean, it takes a long time, and some people actually never learn that lesson, or sometimes it takes something terrible for somebody to realize, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be like this.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, that's just it. There's, probably generational pain sort of thing too. Like you said, like he was learned or taught a certain way. He learned so much, and then maybe had a kid before he was ready, which, I mean, who's ready for a kid really, but not able to deal with his own shit, and then passing that on to you then.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that makes sense. I mean, we're all dealing with all kinds of different generational stuff too, that we don't even know how deep or how far it actually goes. Yeah. So it's like, well, how far do I have to unwind this? And there's a lot of more spiritual type people, but also more in the psychology direction. They say a lot of the times, if you have generational trauma, it extends as far back as 7 generations.
That's wild.
And if you don't do something about it, you'll push it 7 generations forward.
Mm-hmm. Because
if you haven't done anything if you recognize the problem and do nothing about it, you haven't really changed anything.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, and don't get me wrong, recognition by itself is pretty big, but sometimes you don't know if you can, or sometimes you're just in a life lot where you can't be like that. But you seem to be like a pretty happy person, enjoys his life, does the things that he enjoys, does construction, and he's happy about it. Not everybody gets that.
Yeah, I'm not like a fucking like hardcore drug addict and an alcoholic and like just the typical bullshit that you see in construction. But I think a lot of us have a choice when we're dealing with these generational traumas, and some people don't even have the choice to wake up and decide that they want to be a certain way. But I think that you really want to try to undo that trauma as much as possible. And so I take that with me wherever I go, that little snippet of advice or wisdom, and I try to push my agenda of kindness onto people, because it makes more sense to not be the way that my dad was, and not make the choice to fall into a deep, dark hole of self-pity and victimhood, and decide that I can be a bigger person, and I can use morality to, create good relationships around me, and just create a better life for myself.
Nice.
And, well, I mean, not just for myself, that seems selfish, but for the people around me as well.
Yeah, but if you can't be there for yourself, it's really hard to be there for anybody else too.
That's true. I've had people tell me that before. In fact, my martial arts coach, Brad, he talked to me once. I can't remember what the hell I said I was doing, but he's chatting me up, and I made some commitment to something, and he's like, "Oh, like you must be the kind of person who puts other people first, and you'll go to great lengths, but like, how can you sustain that if you're not taking care of yourself?" And I think I kind of took a step back when he said that and started realizing like it's okay to be a little bit selfish sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and actually just that alone, being able to take that step back and take a thought, that's actually a huge thing that most people can't do or don't realize that there's an ability or a need for that sometimes.
Yeah, man.
Because, I mean, how often, well, talking to a lot of people about that where it's like, is this going to matter in 2 weeks or even 2 hours from now? What am I even mad about? Right? So just think about it, take a breath, rub your earlobes, say "ooh-saw" a few times. Okay, what are we doing today?
Come home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
If you have to. Shit, I lost my thought. Bad at that.
No, it's all good, man.
Especially when the pressure's on.
There's no pressure. Everything's cool.
It's nerve-wracking to me.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of the fun of getting this out. It's like, I actually thought I knew this better.
Yeah. I was like playing over just scenarios in my head. Like, well, what am I going to say if he says that? And blah, blah, blah. Driving my truck home from work. It's ridiculous. Stupid shit. But yeah, I think your morality plays a big part in improving the lives around you. I mean, to go back to kind of what we were talking about, where I'm, actually recognizing that I need to not be so stretched out, like trying to help people, and focus a little bit more on like improving myself. Like, I sound crazy.
No, not at all. Because you can give and give and give. But if there's nothing left, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
Right? It just can't. Right? So if you give everything out and you come home, you've got nothing left at the end of the day. It's like, well, then if you're trying to do that in a relationship, what are you bringing home? You're bringing home your emptiness. That's not great for another person, because what are you expecting them to fill you back up then too? That's not healthy for them, because then it's just a constant taking, consuming from each other kind of thing like that, as opposed to taking that break, going to your room and even just sitting and breathing for a bit and meditating. And no, I need a good sweat now that I'm kind of centered and whatever sort of thing like that too. So and I think from what I've seen from your training and your drive to actually know yourself better and test yourself better, push yourself, I think you're exactly the kind of person that has probably more inner strength than you realize. And it's a matter. It's weird because it's like you don't know it until you start finding what those things are. And like you say, like you're getting into jiu-jitsu, and it's like, I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to get a few things right, but then I'm going to learn. It's not I'm getting wrong. I'm going to learn.
Yeah.
And that's huge, because it's like you can just think of doing it wrong and I suck at this. And again, you're self-deprecating. No. You're learning. And that's kind of the whole Brene Brown thing that she talks about too. Like, there is the most success you'll get is from failure, because you don't really learn from things that you do well. Like you've already kind of mastered that, or you're good at it, but it's like you don't even think to improve or optimize and improve on that sometimes. Yeah. But when you screw up, it's like, oh, there's a lot I need to rethink on this, or how can I prevent this from happening again, kind of thing, right? And then you start to learn, and then it's like, okay, well, is there a different way to look at this? Am I just going at this the wrong direction? Maybe take a 90-degree turn and say, okay, can I do this differently, but still make it effective? And it's amazing how many things that applies to in life.
Yeah, it really is.
It is.
Yeah. So the thought that I lost earlier that I was trying to come back to was your honesty with yourself. And that's a big part of the reason why I keep, striving to want to learn jiu-jitsu and to improve in things that I feel like I suck at. Because, these are extremely hard skill sets that I'm kind of diving into, mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu. Being like super, super honest with yourself and being able to say, maybe I don't fucking know everything. That alone, that white belt mentality, that alone is going to help, I think, anybody who wants to train martial arts, or really anything that you want to improve at. You could apply it to playing guitar, or you could apply it to skateboarding. You got to kind of tell yourself, well, I don't know everything.
Yeah.
In fact, I suck, but it's okay because I'm learning and I'm still on the right path, and I'll still keep showing up to be able to, go and get to where I want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes good sense. I mean, that was something that, my martial arts instructor had pointed out to me too, that especially when you get to be, well, an older adult and you're in your later years and stuff like that, and it's even harder to listen, because it's like, I've been a professional, I've, like, not my case, but like, there's people that raise families, and it's like, I've been in charge, I've been doing everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, to go back to that, sit quiet, do what you're told,
and listen,
is very difficult.
Yeah. Right? I see a lot of that, especially in middle-aged men, white-haired men.
What do you mean I'm middle-aged? Come on.
White-haired. You're not quite there yet. Men who basically want to go out and tell the world that they've been everywhere and seen everything and they know everything. It's such a silly mentality. And like, even my coach will tell me, like, I think he's a first stripe black belt, which is, that takes a considerable amount of time to be able to get to that level. But he still says, like, he learns shit on the daily from just people who show up and have new techniques. Like, he might get some white belt student who's on his first day that he can learn something from. Yeah. Like, it makes sense. We probably learn a lot more. He probably learns a lot more from us as students than we are from him. I don't even know if that's proper to say.
No, that's exactly right. I find for myself, because I'm a black belt and I'm somewhat athletic naturally, and I've been told I'm kind of good at what I do, so I appreciate that. But at the same time, that also leaves a lot that I don't know, because I don't have the same injuries and ailments and limitations that other people do. So it's like, well, I can do these flying things, and then you go to teach somebody, it's like, I can't jump. Yeah. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, this actually is a brand new thing for me to delve into. It's like, how can I teach this person the same thing in a modified way that'll still be healthy and safe for them? Because that's, well, like any type of fitness, you're doing it to be better, not to get deeper into your injuries and stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the theory, and then accidents happen and stuff too. But I mean, more often than not, especially when you're getting to, like, when I get to work with older students, like age-wise, not belt-wise, that it's exactly what I need for my training. It's like, well, how well do I know Kung Fu? Can I teach this to literally anybody? And if I can't, then I need to be a better teacher. I need to learn more. Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, these brand new students that I'm getting, it's like, this is honestly exactly the lessons I need, is to be able to teach everybody the same thing, but in their way, so they understand it. Yeah. And then
that opens up your avenue of, like, learning how to communicate with people better, like understanding that some people might have some physical restrictions, inflexibility in certain areas, lack of strength in certain areas. Yeah. And then you start learning, like, how to communicate that. And then you probably apply that to what you do in your own routines. And then your own routines become, that much better.
Yeah. The other part is too, is that if you can relate regular life things to people that they already know, then you don't have to spoon feed them every single step.
Yeah, man.
So I was thinking about this earlier, is the working with somebody that's looking to get into fitness, but it's a 60-year-old grandmother, and it's like, well, I mean, I just want to do a little bit of stretching and stuff, like, I don't know if I can do, and it's like, no, you can do everything that I can do. I guarantee it. You may not be able to do it as fast or as fancy looking, but you shouldn't want to. You're 60. Yeah. Right? So, and the other part of it is too, is that, do you sew? She's like, oh yeah, I do this and that. It's like, okay, that alone is going to help us communicate better, because when you're stitching corners and stuff like that, that you have to have your 90-degree corners in a nice line to make your corners look good. That's exactly what our stances are. There you go. Yeah. And then you start relating things that they already know to what you're doing, and it's just like, this is exactly the same as this. Honestly, because I do construction, it's super easy to teach construction workers. Yeah. Because of, like, the lines and shapes, and you just square this up, square up your back, straighten it out, sort of thing like that. It's really good in certain ways, that if you can find that common ground to make that the teaching better. And then same thing as a student, it's just like, well, how is this similar to things that I've already done? Is this spin going to be like how I used to spin in basketball? Or is this, like, other whatever aspects, or when I'm going to the grocery store, can I use Kung Fu to not hurt myself picking something up out of the freezer? Because am I bending the wrong way? Yeah. Because we do that. We're strong enough to be lazy. So
strong enough to be lazy. That's funny.
Yeah.
So you can compensate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
And that's why a lot of people get sore backs is because they lift their back instead of their legs.
Yeah, bending right over, hinging at the hips. Yeah. Well,
Everybody's-
not even hinging at the hips, like full on, like arcing your lower back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just looks painful to do when you see it. It's like, oh, your legs are so much stronger.
Yeah, like, like squat down into that position. Like, it makes more sense. It's the way your body's meant to move. Keeping your spine straight and sinking right down, getting your ass to the ground practically.
Yeah.
But I think another thing people got to look at is like baby steps. Like when you talk about how you're teaching, like, somebody who isn't not confident about, certain aspects of their physicalities that might prevent them or whatever, prevent them from wanting to be a certain place. They got to understand baby steps, man. Nobody fucking gets anywhere without taking the first step, without making those tiny little increments that you need to make to be able to,
Well, that's actually
get to your goal.
almost like the best analogy is taking steps.
Yeah.
It's like, well, do you have to think about walking when you're on your phone? Of course not. You've done so much walking, it's not even a conscious thought anymore. But it's like it takes time to get to that point when you're sliding into stances or you're getting into forms and stuff like that. But it's the same thing. It's like we're just doing footwork today. Don't even worry about what your top half is doing. I just want your stances good today. That's all we're going to do. And it's like, then I'll teach you how to move your arms a certain way, but you're going to be sweating by the end of this anyway. So like, it's still going to be a workout as well as it's going to be a mental sweat. So it's so much fun because you see these people that are nervous and unsure of themselves, but they're still somewhat willing. And then you see the confidence grow, and then you see those eureka moments when they get the idea of why you're doing a technique or that tiny little adjustment. It's like, oh, this is so much more comfortable now. I was struggling with it. That's why you harp on technique all the time. That's why you need these things, because speed, power, all that other stuff, it'll come by itself once you know the technique or the purpose of why you're doing these things.
Totally. And sometimes explaining things in different ways will kind of be maybe that missing puzzle piece to those eureka moments. Because, like, I feel those all the fucking time where I'm like, that's acceptable? I should be doing that? I know you've explained it to me a million times, but, like, now I'm just grasping that concept. And then it totally changes, the way that you look at things, the way that you move. When you're in the gym and the way that you spar and the way that you roll. Totally. I've had lots of moments like that. Actually, I love that feeling. And I always approach a lot of my training like fucking so unconfident, like it probably drives people crazy because they see this big, tall, 6'2" dude who, should be big and strong and confident. But I mean, the reality is I'm not like a super confident martial artist. I'm trying to kick that habit of like, this negative self-talk and telling myself that I can't do certain things. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's something to struggle with. Something to, whatever.
Well, no, it's actually, it's good to actually keep that humbleness though too.
Yeah.
Because the other side of it is that you start losing that little bits of self-doubt not even self-doubt, but just times of introspection. You just start talking or acting like, no, I got this. Oh, I know this. Well, how well do you know it? Or you start getting too cocky about it and somebody puts you on your ass and like, thank you for humbling me again. I needed that.
Oh my God. I've had moments where I'm like, I'm going to kick ass today. You go into the gym, and then you roll with some big bad motherfucker, and then you forget the fact that you're 155 pounds.
Yeah.
But they snap you back to reality really quick.
Well, and I actually like being taught lessons by people that are half my size.
Yeah.
Because it shows
we talked about that.
Yeah, because it shows you that your size means nothing.
Yeah, totally. Man, in jiu-jitsu, the idea should be that you can leverage somebody bigger than you and just be able to fuck them up.
Yeah. Arguably, should actually be easier for you.
Yeah. Ideally, yeah, because assuming that you're a smaller person, you might be more athletic. Yeah. Flexible and more capable of certain movements than a bigger guy would be.
And again, technique is way more important than size or strength.
Yeah, right? Technique is really important. There's a little bit of that kind of brutish aspect in jiu-jitsu. Like I can tell you right now, if I showed you a couple things and then had you get on the mats with me, even though I've been doing jiu-jitsu for, almost 2 years, maybe a bit longer. If I showed you like maybe a week's worth of jiu-jitsu and just kind of showed you what it was about, your size alone would probably give me a fucking hard time.
Yeah.
And so there is a little bit of that reality, and you do got to have respect for that when you're, sizing people up on the streets. Man.
Yeah. But I try not to ever overestimate anybody. Because I've seen guys that are half my size beating up guys that are bigger than me.
Yeah.
And just like a hockey fight almost. But it was in a hallway in the mall or something like that where people are in each other's faces and the little guy just basically like crawls up to the other guy and walk all the way to the ground. It's like, holy shit.
Climbing up.
Do it again.
Let me see another one. Hell yeah. That was fucking sweet. Can you teach me that?
Yeah. That's the thing too, but you see like once that guy's there and he's just like revved and it's like, stay back because he's ready to keep going.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. You're clearing the crowd out.
Yeah.
Fuck.
But that's the thing though too, is that if he was not confident about himself or whatever, he wouldn't have that. But it's like, I don't care how big you are. You're not going to get away with this.
Totally, man. Yeah. You kind of gotta be careful when you do mixed martial arts. I've learned, like, when you start, you're like, oh, I train mixed martial arts. Like, I'm so tough and stuff. Totally, I swear everybody does it. I think most people get into mixed martial arts because they watch UFC or whatever, and they're like, fuck, that looks cool. The ladies would love this. Like, I could beat up anybody in a bar brawl. It's like, no, like, there's still people out there who are, like, really wicked natural fighters, and you can just, it's a very bad idea to go out there assuming that you can't get hurt because you're a martial artist.
Yeah, well, that's always funny, too, because they talk about, like, what's the best martial art, or what's the best style of sword fighting, what's the best this or that, and it's like, it's up to the individual. You can't say one style is better than the other. I mean
I'm really biased. I'm going to say jiu-jitsu and MMA, but
anyways. But for not actually hurting somebody and for being able to submit somebody without actually hurting or killing or breaking them in certain ways, it's easier to turn it into a sport. Is where what I train, you can't be a sport. That's usually why, a lot of Shaolin masters and stuff like that lose fights in the ring because it's like, well, I have to not do like 60% of my training. Yeah. So like I can't. Like there's the same as watching McGregor fight Mayweather. And they did a boxing match. There was I think bare minimum 3 times where McGregor got around Mayweather. Yeah. But it's just like I can't do anything from the back that I would typically do because I can't just run and wrap him sort of thing like that. I'm here to punch him. I can't do anything else. Yeah. And there was a few times where if it was an MMA thing, even if Mayweather would have trained for a year, like Conor McGregor would have fucked him up, like without question.
Oh, for sure. Right? Yeah. Like absolutely he would fuck on McGregor. But that that's like kind of a different story because you got like a boxer who's really good at boxing. Kind of like, the Shaolin monks who try to get in the rings with MMA fighters. And they're getting absolutely, demolished by these MMA fighters. Because they're taught, I guess, a specific rule set. And, like I was saying earlier, I personally think that mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu are probably your best bet for self-defense.
Yeah. But I also find if you're fighting one person.
Yeah, if you're fighting one person, yeah. Some of the
multiple attackers, it's just like you're gonna get on the ground so everybody else can start kicking in the back.
Not so.
Like, I don't know if that's the best art all of a sudden now.
Yeah, it'll certainly give you some awareness on like, just where you should and should not be when there's multiple people around you. In fact, you should probably ask yourself why the fuck you're trying to fight multiple people in the first place.
Yeah, well, and it's not your choice sometimes.
Yeah,
right. So,
true. If you get cornered in an alley or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just it. And, in broad daylight in the grocery store parking lot. Yeah. Like, shit happens, man.
It does happen. Well, and people fucking, they'll throw fucking cheap shots at you. Yeah. You won't even be ready, and they'll knock you in the back of the head or whatever. So, what good is your training if you're fucking knocked out? Yeah. There's always that game of luck. Yeah. When it comes to striking and people throwing fists at each other. Just because you're a trained fighter doesn't mean that Joe Blow down the street can't catch a lucky shot across your chin and knock you the fuck out. It'll still happen.
Well, that's what we always found too when we would go sparring. It's actually really difficult to spar white belts or yellow belts because they're so untrained and so unpredictable.
Oh, it's spazzy, yeah.
Yeah, and totally. The thing is that once you get good at throwing a specific style of punch or kicks, it's like, well, you see them moving, you know it's going to be a straight line. They can change where it's going to go and stuff like that, but you basically know the technique of how they're going to kick and then how to defend that.
Totally. Yeah.
But it's like when somebody throws a punch and it goes like that at you, it's like, well, how do I stop something like that?
Yeah.
Like, it's just a mess. And they're trying to weave through your blocks and stuff like that, and it's like sometimes they land a lucky one.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I've been punched in the face by a handful of white belts. I've punched people or kicked people or something by accident because same thing, that they're unsure of what they're doing. They move in and it's just like, oh, I folded that guy in half, but it's like, that was your fault. That's my point. Sorry man. Sorry though. Sorry, because you need to sit down and take a breath though.
There's a rule set, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're training for sport, I'd imagine, when it's kung fu. Like, I haven't been to a kung fu class. I did the couple kung fu classes with you where we did like the mobility. But I mean, that's not sparring. But yeah, I could totally see that. I mean, it's not uncommon, even in MMA gyms, where you get people who are really, really untrained, very new, very greener than me, who will come in and they're just throwing bombs. Like, they're trying to fucking smash you. And you kind of got to take a step back and give them their space, and then, you know, like, show them what's up a little bit. Like, obviously don't rough them up. But just show them, like, a straight punch can land way faster than your big goofy looping punches. You know, like, my controlled footwork will keep me a lot safer than your goofy, super high stance, you know, legs close together, whatever the hell
Straight
you're doing.
knees. Ugh.
Yeah.
Don't lock them out. It's so easy to get your knees kicked backwards.
I mean, there's certain scenarios and situations in different martial arts that you have different stances for. Like if you look at Muay Thai, Muay Thai is a very tall stance. It's not quite straight knees, but you will see a lot of newer guys in Muay Thai with the super high and straight knee kind of thing with their feet really close together. But yeah, you kind of got to show those people that you're not here to fucking destroy each other. You're here to train martial arts. Yeah. I see it all the time, and I have guys throw at me like really fucking hard. I haven't sparred for a while because I've had like concussions and all sorts of ridiculous freaking injuries going on. But like, I still see people doing it, and there's just certain people that I know what I'm in for when I'm gonna spar them. So it's like, you know what to expect, and it's kind of your responsibility to say, no, I don't want to do that if you don't want to do it. Or to communicate to them, maybe you should chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
I'm not here to kill you.
Yeah, well, back in my sword fighting days, we'd always call that going green.
Yeah.
Because you're basically getting mad, you're hulking out.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I can't lose.
Totally. And that's going to work against you because you're going to gas way faster. You're going to get
and you get sloppy is the other thing.
And you get, exactly.
And you get very predictable. Mm-hmm. If even if you have some level of training, it's like, well, he's looking exactly to where he wants to attack and you just, it's, I don't know. And again, it's easier said than done because emotion gets into it sometimes, and it's like, okay, what am I doing? Am I breathing this out? Am I trying too hard? Am I thinking of what techniques I should be using?
Yeah. Right.
And that's the other part too, is that your animal brain kicks in. It's like your cognitive brain shuts right off almost some days, right?
So you're fight or flight, and then you just do spazzy, goofy things when you're not in a dangerous situation. Martial arts should be meditative. Martial arts should be a meditation. It should be. It's not that it should be calm, but it should be disciplined, and it should be very controlled. And if you watch, I think jiu-jitsu is a really good example. If you watch people who are like fairly good at jiu-jitsu against somebody who's newer, it's really it's funny to watch because like the facial expression is just calm, smiling, laughing. Yeah. I think about like Spider-Man a lot when I roll. I always think about like the hilarious trash talk. And just like whispering.
Bonesaw's ready.
Bonesaw, yeah. 3 minutes. Yeah.
3 minutes of playtime. Yeah, and that's kind of the other thing too, where I kind of think it's like, well, I'm a big person. I've got 3 older brothers. I remember wrestling a lot when I was a kid, and I got pretty good at it. And it's like, how much could I just walk in there and do not bad? And then how much of it would I just get smashed on? Because it's like, again, it's like I wouldn't walk in there with any level of confidence. And I know there is very little of my Kung Fu training that's actually going to transfer to grappling. Yeah. Because there's just certain things in the way they talk about making triangles and guillotines and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't even know what part of your body's making a guillotine. Like, what's going on?
How do I do that?
Yeah.
I don't even know what a guillotine, to be honest with you. Yeah. I think you can apply a lot of what you learn in Kung Fu to jiu-jitsu, especially when it comes to the humbleness and the discipline and the training regimen in general.
Yeah.
You could totally apply that to jiu-jitsu, like that's not so far-fetched. It's a little bit more, I don't want to say realistic, it's a little bit more combative, like there's a legitimate threat of somebody trying to choke you and put you in painful joint locks and stuff.
Yeah.
But you'll notice in grappling, at least something that I've noticed, is you put the pressure on somebody and they give it right back to you. And that's what happens when you get mad.
Yeah.
If you get angry at somebody on the mat, or if you do something out of an explosiveness, and there's certain situations where you need to use explosiveness. If you do something out of kind of that explosive anger, they're going to fucking give it back to you. I think a good example is my friend Bennett. We're pretty one-on-one when we roll, like one-for-one, when we roll. Like we're a really good match, and I kind of know his game and he kind of knows my game. Like we're old training partners. We've been training for a long time. Well, not really. I haven't been training for that long. He's one of my oldest partners though. Okay. If I try to give it to him, he gives it to me right back. And, no matter what position it is that I put him in, he's stronger than me. And so I think he already has that advantage over me when I do try to put him in certain joint locks or try to pull certain techniques or just get out of his fucking mount or whatever, or get out of his side mount. If I put the pace on him, he puts it right back on me. It's wild.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. It's so awesome. I love that feeling because it's like this like push-pull kind of thing that's always going on in grappling. It's really cool. It's something you got to experience.
Yeah, well, that's kind of neat too because then you can kind of learn and evolve together, and then you know each other that much better, and then you have that same consistent partner, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I learned these couple things, and like for me, these really hit home because of the way I fight or whatever sort of thing like that, or these things make more sense for my application. Totally. And then 2 months later you learn something else and it's like, well, this isn't my wheelhouse, and it's like, oh, but he's really fucking me up with it now. Dude. But then you see them apply it in their way and it's like, oh, that's what you're doing with this, and now I can see why. It's like, it's still not really for me, but it's like, I know how to defend against you from this now.
Yeah, totally, man.
So
some people really love certain techniques too. I'm really bad for staying in guard. I like playing from guard a lot, so I'm okay with like being in the bottom position.
Yeah. Well, and again, playing your strengths. If you know that's where you're comfortable, or it's like, well, and typically if you're defensive, if you're not the first person moving, the first person that moves makes the first mistake. Yeah, usually they make the first opening. Even if it's not a mistake, there's always an opening.
Yeah, somewhere. Totally.
So, and
it's kind of up to you to figure out how to close those gaps. But I guess where I was going with that is like, just give me a sec here. I lost it. Whatever. We'll come back to it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I get it though too. I mean, we do the regular sparring sort of thing like that in Kung Fu. And we have, you have your soul classes where you're only, at maximum, you can only move at 30% of your fastest rate. Mm-hmm. And then it gets to some of the classes where it's, it's only high belts, like brown belt and up. And it's like, okay, we're not stepping back and bowing after every point. I just want you to go hard for 2 minutes. Yeah. Oh. And it's like, remember, full speed, you still need control because we're going to hurt each other. It's going to happen. But let's maintain our control while we're doing this.
Damage control, yeah.
And holy shit, like, it's like I can see why you need to be a brown to black belt to get into that kind of stuff, because there's been times where I've had to I've almost kicked somebody's head off. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I luckily, how to, break at the joints kind of thing like that, where you can soften the blow by like bending your elbow or just letting your wrist go limp or something like that. So even if you make impact, it doesn't hurt. Yeah, totally. Sort of thing. Or say, like you just let the stiffness from your like knee down just go away. So that kick, if it lands, it still doesn't do nearly as much damage as you just about did. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes, I've almost been knocked out from a spinning elbow. Didn't see it coming through my face into it even. Whap. And it's like, tweet, 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 tweet. That's a concussion, yeah. Yeah, and then go and talk to one of the masters about it, and it's like, well, why would you attack him that way? He's built out of rocks. Like, oh, duh. It didn't work in your favor, did it? Yeah, well, it just did. It's like, You didn't come to me for sympathy, did you? No, I didn't, master.
What the hell did I do wrong, man?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great thing too, because again, it's just like, right, how would I do that differently? Well, first of all, if he's got his back to me, that's not a vulnerable point, not for him anyway. He's expecting me to come in just about any way because he knows he can throw these spinning elbows and stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay. And there's only so much padding you can put on, even, right?
Yeah.
It's like an elbow.
Totally, man. I mean, you can put on the elbow pads. That might help a little.
But, well, the thing is, whatever you're hitting still gets most of that force. Yeah. It may not be the cutting edge of your bones or whatever sort of thing like that, but it's like almost all that force is still there, though.
You can give yourself concussions from punching. Like, if you're too stiff when you're punching.
Yeah.
And that's a new concept to me. My coach was talking about that not too long ago, I don't think. But, like, if you're too stiff when you're extending your arm out, that shockwave's still going somewhere.
Yeah.
So there's, like, kind of these fine points, and he was literally talking to me about this last night, so I'm just stealing from him. There's kind of these fine points of when you're throwing your fist where you're soft, stiff, and soft.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think it's stiff and then soft. I don't know. But yeah, you can literally give yourself concussions from throwing punches at the heavy bag or other people.
Yeah.
If you don't really know how to punch, fuck, I don't even know how to punch. Like,
yeah,
I'm still learning how to punch.
Yeah.
How to punch properly.
Yeah, and that's kind of like all the way through all of martial arts. Like that's like our version is almost exactly that. But it's the name of the tech or that way of thinking is firm but relaxed theory.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, okay, well that makes sense because it's like, well, do you want to be so rigid that you can't even move?
Yeah.
Well, it's not functional for you, and it's like you may not get hurt or anything if they punch you, but you can't really defend yourself properly either.
Yeah.
Right, but you want to be loose enough that you can comfortably throw a punch and you have control of what you're doing, sort of thing. Still, I'm butchering it right now.
That's okay.
But I mean,
I butchered most of this conversation,
yeah.
so don't worry.
But it's kind of ubiquitous throughout martial arts is that there's a certain reason why there's the hard style and soft style of things. Like there's always some level of philosophy, and typically water is always the great example.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, do you want to be hard like ice? Do you want to flow like a river? And sometimes both of them are useful in their own ways.
Totally.
But it's like, do I want to try to push this stone or do I want to just flow around it?
Yeah. And then it kind of feeds into body size too. Like I see a lot of really big, strong dudes who are holding me down, red face and veins popping out their foreheads.
Yeah. 10 more seconds, he's going to fall over.
Yeah.
Just if I can just hold this for a few more.
I roll with this one guy, and he's a big, tough motherfucker. Not somebody I'd want to fuck with on the street. Doesn't really know MMA that well. He's a little inconsistent with his training, but like I enjoy him as a partner because he's learning and he is starting to kind of understand that. I don't want to name him. He's starting to kind of understand that focusing more on technique as opposed to being big is going to get you way further.
Yeah.
Because if you focus on just being big, there's going to be a certain threshold where people start getting better than you and people start getting better than you and you're stuck down here and you don't really understand why. It's because you're not really focusing on not using your size and instead focusing on the techniques and fundamentals and the basics.
Yeah.
And so this guy, when I roll with him, if I can land a sweep on him, that's like the most amazing thing to him. Because like I probably weigh about 60 to 70 pounds less than him, and when my scrawny little ass is flipping him up over my head or doing whatever wacky sweep I just so happen to catch, and then I get a top position, he's like, "How the fuck did you do that?" And I'm like, "I can show you. Like, do you want to be big and strong, or do you want to learn jujitsu?"
Yeah.
There's a kind of a definitive difference, and
yeah.
you kind of you got to find that balance between like being a big tough motherfucker and being able to be flexible and strong and use technique in wicked positions.
Yeah, I know for me it really fucks me up when somebody takes my feet from me or picks me up or something because I'm so used to being planted and grounded and solid.
Totally.
And somebody sweeps me out or makes me do the splits or something. Not only is it embarrassing, it's just like I'm completely done. Yeah. As soon as my leg's there or I lose my balance, it's like the next 3 seconds, you could have done anything to me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially if you don't. Especially if you're not comfortable with something like jiu-jitsu or like grappling in general. Like even wrestling could probably save your life in that kind of a situation.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, and it's kind of cool too because it is it's a marathon that doesn't have a finish line.
Yeah.
And
it shouldn't be a sprint. It should be exactly a marathon.
Yeah, and the only person you're racing against is yourself.
Yeah, man.
Because other people are. You can kind of use them as a marker and stuff like that, and a guide point to see. It's like, well, this guy is a higher belt, and I aspire to be kind of like him in a certain way, but I'm not him. I have to figure out my own style.
Yeah, and like you should be inspired by people that have created success and things that you want to be good at. I can't remember what the word I'm thinking of is. But that's going to drive you to, want to be a better martial artist in the fact of martial arts, or, a better stockbroker if you want to talk about being a stockbroker.
Yeah.
Yeah. You look to people and you find inspiration, and like there's a lot of people that I look to and I find inspiration, and they're not even people on the TV, man. They're just everyday people that I train with. You see them on the street and just think they're some regular dude, but it's like, that guy, I want to be able to emulate what he does, but not exactly the way that he does it, right? Because everybody's going to kind of branch off into their own avenues and sort of start to learn their own skill sets within that kind of realm of possibilities and rule set, if there's a rule set. Yeah, it's very true. And to not ever think that you're done learning, I think is the other thing. White belt mentality, man.
Yeah,
it's so super important.
Yeah,
you got to be so fucking honest with yourself. And just shut up that little ego voice in the back of your head that wants to complain about everything and tell you that, things are done a certain way when maybe you don't know that things are done a certain way because somebody hasn't shown you how to properly do that. Maybe if you shut up and listen, then you probably learn how to properly do that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And that's the biggest, like we talked about before, that's the biggest stumbling block for a lot of people is that even when they do start to get a little bit good at something, then they start getting an overinflated ego about it. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you want to go in there and straighten him out?
Yeah.
Because he needs it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That culture kind of sucks, but guys like that, it's not that they don't really make it that far. It's that they realize really quickly that kind of attitude doesn't really serve them well.
Yeah.
To learn.
And if they can't break it, they leave. It's like, oh, that's cool as shit.
I've never really seen somebody like spaz out and leave the gym before. Yeah. I've had people be like, well, that's not fair to me. And I was like, dude, that was the drill. And I beat you at the drill. Like, it's okay. It was fair. You just didn't understand what we were doing. Like, It's okay. We don't have to get mad at each other. And let's move on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. Because that's the other part too. Like, winning shouldn't be that big of a deal. Like it's good to do well, but I mean, if you're only going there to win, it's not really the goal unless you really think that you're going to be on TV in the octagon or something. And even then, it's like you better step it up and you better be there all the time
to win. I think you should want to win, but there's a time and a place to want to win, and that's in the ring.
Yeah.
You're not winning during training. There's no win or lose during training. There's learning. There's no winning or losing.
Yeah.
You're going to learn a lot if you approach situations like that, and if you can take a look at yourself and ask the question, well, why do I suck at this? That's learning. Mm-hmm. That's like you're actually going to learn if you look at your martial arts experience that way. Yeah. Any experience that way.
Yeah, and that's always the interesting part is that I've really started to learn that my martial arts actually makes a lot of my other parts of my life better. Because it's like, well, there's so much interesting and well thought out philosophy that's thousands of years old.
Yeah, man.
And it's just like, how do we continue to pass this knowledge on to people that even if they get little bits of it here and there, it's like hopefully everybody starts to understand that there is always an easier way to do things. There is a better way for yourself, your body, your mind. And I mean, social media is a great example of going the opposite way. Like the whole idea of the like button on Facebook was to bring positivity.
Yeah.
And it turned into a pissing contest.
Yeah, totally. How many likes can you get?
Yeah, and it turned into a lot of depression problems because of that. Completely the opposite of what they were going for. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, okay, there's the law of unintended consequences, but that's the other part too, is that even when you do really well and you get all those likes, and then somebody puts a bad comment, doesn't matter how many likes you have. Somebody said I was shit, and I'm going to stick to that.
Yeah.
And why do we do that? Like,
yeah. It's like a tower of cards, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so fun. That's actually a really good analogy.
Totally. Because it's like it's really superficial to like want people to like you. And it's not that it's a bad thing to want people to like you. You shouldn't have to go to great lengths to have people like you. You shouldn't have to, this is going to sound whack as hell. You shouldn't have to adjust your beliefs and values to suit what other people think. You should, find that in yourself and establish yourself as, Michael Rizopoulos or Connor Money Mania.
Yeah. Yeah.
Connor Money.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Because I mean, you should have, you shouldn't have all of your worth from other people.
Yeah.
Like, you should feel somewhat complete by yourself.
Yeah, man. I don't want that slow drip of dopamine from having to satiate somebody else's wacky ass idea of what I should be.
Yeah.
I should be able to get that dopamine drip from myself.
Yeah.
Look at myself in the mirror and say, fuck yeah, I'm fucking proud of who I am. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just it. I think there's probably, I know there was a point in my life I couldn't look myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And it's like, is this what rock bottom is? And
man.
then just one of those things where it's like, do I stay here? Is this what my existence is going to be? Yeah. And then you think about it, it's like, well, the nice thing about rock bottom is that everything's up from here. And that little bit of positivity starts to grow. It creates something, and then something can be built from that. And then sometimes it falls apart a little bit, but it never goes away. And if you still have that spark, that drive, that seedling that's going to grow into something, if you nurture it, right? But if you sit there and self-deprecate and blame everybody else for your problems and stuff like that, it's like, well, thing's never going to grow.
Totally.
That inner spirit, that inner growth is never going to happen.
Baby steps, man.
Yeah.
You got to break it down into little bite-sized pieces.
Yeah.
Start by making your bed in the morning.
Yeah, well, that whole idea in the Chinese philosophy that the crisis and opportunity is the same thing.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, and I love that phrasing, because it's like there's tons of shitty things that happen to people. What are the good side of it, though? And there's always a bright side to it. Sometimes it is incredibly tough to see, and I know that. Yeah. But there is almost always a positive side to everything that happens.
Yeah, you kind of, there comes a time in your life, I don't want to sound too preachy, but if you're going through tough times, you kind of got to bite the bullet and realize that, life's not that bad.
Yeah.
Life's not as bad as you think it is. It might be really shitty now. I lost my thought. That sucks.
No, but
my brain.
I'll take it from the part that I kind of understood, is that especially now with the growth of technology and how easy life is, people are not necessarily happier. Mm-hmm. And they still bitch and moan about stuff. But it's like, you live in North America. You can't really live in a better place. Like, you have, especially in Canada, you have socialized healthcare that you pay for, but not directly out of your pocket. And the doctors will take care of you. Doesn't matter if you can afford it or not. Totally. That's why Breaking Bad would never happen in Canada. That show would have been 2 minutes.
Yes, yeah.
show would have been 30 seconds long. Because in Canada, he'd have been freaking out. It's like, oh, I have cancer or whatever. And then it's
here's treatment.
It's like, yeah, you're going to be on a wait list, but you're going to get treatment because, of course, you are.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. You going to go back to work now?
Yeah. We're very lucky to be living in Canada. It's frustrating now. For sure, it's frustrating now. There's lots of things that could be done better.
Yeah, but in our opinions, there's some people that think this is exactly perfect and there is no better way to do things. But the problem with trying to build a utopia is that there has to be so many moving parts and things have to work so perfectly that anything disrupting it's going to fuck the whole thing up. Mm-hmm. And I would think that people 100 years ago, if they could be transported to today, this would be utopia to them. And
to them,
in almost every way.
To us, it's like,
well, it could be better, and it's just like, you ungrateful pricks.
Yeah.
And I think about that sometimes too, when it's just like I start to get a big head about my situation or whatever, and it's nice to go to the mountains and kind of be humbled by these things that'll be there centuries, millennia, millions of years after I die. Or going the other way to think, it's like, well, in this part of the world, we are very lucky. Travel a little bit. See how hard your life actually is. See what other people have to live through on a daily basis.
I think
we're very lucky living here.
I think Jordan Peterson talks about he talks about how basically a want for a perfectly happy life is like setting yourself up for disappointment.
Yeah.
Because if you're just expecting life to be super happy all the time, what point is there to all of your struggles? Why should you wake up in the morning and get out of bed?
Yeah.
If life is just pure bliss,
yeah, there can be no great triumph without any great struggle.
Yeah, I don't think there should be such a thing as utopia. I think without, the faults in humanity and, the horrible fucking things that some of us do to each other, we wouldn't have a comparison to those amazing moments on a mountaintop, looking over the fucking sky.
Yeah.
And just thinking about how fucking small you seem to the universe. Those moments of shock and awe wouldn't mean anything.
Yeah.
If life was just like simple, easy butter,
Yeah.
I don't think people should want to be happy. I think people should want to be successful.
Yeah.
And I think people should want to find meaning in the things that they do and the life that they live. That's super fucking important. Leave your hope for happiness aside, because that's just fruitless.
Yeah.
You're going to chase that for an eternity, trying to find pure happiness all the time.
Yeah.
It's good to be sad. It's good to be angry.
Yeah.
You can use these things as, as a sign to want to improve certain areas of your life.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine the person that I'd be without my dad being the way that he was. I wouldn't have a kind disposition, I bet you. I wouldn't be the kind of person who values other people so greatly.
Mm-hmm.
I put a lot of emphasis on relationships in my life too. And that's something that's really important to me that I've learned.
Yeah.
Brings me a little bit of stability. And I look at other people and I ask them, am I fucking crazy? And they say, no, you're not fucking crazy. You kind of need that balance between absolute bliss and, absolute miserable chaos.
Yeah, well, that is the idea of I think what Buddha and all these spiritual people that they find, that's what they get into, is they realize that all good isn't actually good and all bad isn't necessarily all bad either.
Mm-hmm.
But finding the balance in between them, because there are going to be times where you have highs, there are going to be times when you have lows, there are going to be things that are out of your control that kind of fuck you over.
Yeah, totally.
But it's like, are you going to sit there and cry about it, or are you going to deal with it and move on with your life?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the other part too, where it's like, and good and bad is a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
Right. So what is good?
It is a matter of perspective.
Right?
Absolutely.
Right. And that's where the whole crisis is an opportunity.
I mean, there's some things that are inherently like fucking evil. Like I think evil exists, and everybody's capable of being evil to an extent.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, in my opinion, I should say, I don't think evil is a real thing, because that's like saying God's real, and I'm an atheist, so
yeah,
I have a hard time believing that. But I think that there is typically a scientific or biological reason for things happening, and not to say that I don't also believe that there is something bigger, greater than us. I mean, like, this is a big waste of space if this entire universe has only produced one species of intelligent life.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Right. So there's definitely more going on out there than we can even really understand. I think I don't think we have enough senses to even perceive what's going on fully.
Yeah, like who knows what's
exactly
beyond this.
Right. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff too. But to say that it's because some omnipotent being what snapped its fingers and it somehow looks like us too. Like that's a lot of hubris to think that we look anything like a god or we're anything like a god.
No, it makes sense.
Right? So, I mean, it's also a history of, you know, a series of control, and God and Santa Claus are kind of the same story. Right? Be good or else.
Or else. No, that's fair, and I totally understand that. I still believe in inherent evil, and I still believe that, you know, people can be fundamentally evil. Mm-hmm. Some people are just so fucking cruel to each other. It's fucking wild.
Oh, it's disgusting.
It is. Yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
If you want to use that word. It's just kind of wild to think about, you know, people's morality.
Yeah.
And
but
belief in God. And,
I think that's a luxury that we have as humans, though. Because nature is immoral. Mm-hmm. Right? It doesn't have a good or bad morality. There is no morality. Yeah. Nature is natural. It just happens. You know, a cheetah needs to eat. So it kills. You know, and that's the way it is. And it's the thing is that life consumes other life.
Totally.
That's how we exist. So whether it's meat or vegetables or sunlight, it doesn't really matter. We all consume something.
Yeah.
And
it's more or less self-balancing.
Right. And that, yeah, exactly. So there are parts of it, I think, that are different than what we would want to say or what we prefer to that should be normal. Mm-hmm. But I mean, just the complexity of our brains. Like, it makes sense why people are schizophrenic. Like, our brains are unbelievably complex. So it only takes a few things to go a little bit wrong, and it's like, I'm not just talking to a Mike, I'm talking to his twin brother sitting in this other chair over here too.
When did Tim get here?
Yeah, exactly. But it's just like, for me, like, it could be a complete reality. But it's like, I don't have a twin brother. There's nobody there. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, he's right there. Like, well, I worked with a guy that had a schizophrenic buddy, and he was super nice, super normal kind of cat. Good enough person, hard enough worker, sort of thing like that. But it's like you couldn't get near him because he was an open can of Coke. And if you got too close to him, he was afraid that he'd tip over and spill out. Okay. And it's
interesting.
And it's like, say that again? And
that was real. That's what he believed.
That's actually what he believed.
That is wild.
Because it's just a type of schizophrenia that he had, where his mind just split a certain way that I was like, wait, like, he looked at himself in the mirror. He's like, yeah, he saw himself as a person, a human with arms and legs and stuff like that. But he somehow still thought he was an open can of Coke that could get spilt.
What?
And it's just like, oh, I'm not supposed to be able to get it. My brain doesn't work that way. Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. That's schizophrenia. Okay, I get it now. I shouldn't be able to get that.
Yeah, I shouldn't even laugh, because that sounds horrible. That sounds like a really, really severe mental illness.
Yeah, but that's what he said, though. He was like, he's a really nice guy, a hard worker. Every other aspect of his life seemed totally normal. But it's just this one unbelievably odd thing.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. Yeah, we are very complex creatures, aren't we?
I've never heard of that. That's wild.
Yeah, and that's one of the, you know, anecdotal stories that I've heard, and I'm sure you talk to some psychologists and stuff, like, oh, I've got stories for you. Right, so it's amazing that I think that's the big part of the quest of human understanding, is that we're just smart enough to not know a fucking thing of what's going on.
Yeah, you know? I mean, that's kind of a good way to put that. Yeah.
Right, like we're just now starting to scratch the surface and peel back the layers of what reality even is, and like what is real.
I think we'd probably get a lot further if people would stop stigmatizing the use of, you know, psychedelics a lot more.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing
is,
want
to get to that.
Well, absolutely, and I think that's actually a good thing that people like Paul Stamets and
totally.
Name just slipped me now, but yeah, like these people that are mycologists and that have spent their entire lives working with scientific research about psychedelics and actually truly understanding the history of it. And it's not just psychedelics for our benefit. It's like these mycelial colonies are basically the nervous system of a forest. Mm-hmm. And it's like, we don't really know how this works. We kind of have an idea, but it's like, there are reasons why forests grow a certain way, and that's a big part to do with the the growth of everything. And even fungus, it's not really a plant, but it's not really an animal either. and it's kind of like its own version of life as well. And it's so interesting because like a lot of people think that it's like, well, it's possibly a way to use a chemical doorway into a different perception of reality. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, okay. But I mean, you say that to somebody that's never done psychedelics or even got high or anything, and it's just like
crazy.
Yeah, you're just like, you're fucking nuts.
Doing drugs, yeah,
fucking wacky.
But it's like, no, fucking take it. I hate saying this, but I think everybody should try acid mushrooms at some point in their lives.
Yeah, and be smart about it. I mean, microdosing is super helpful for a lot of people. I mean,
it really is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of studies that are starting to come out about people with PTSD. Mm-hmm. That they're getting a lot of help with psychedelics, and they're being able to move past these traumas because they can basically dive deep into them, experience them, and see like how this is going to be different and functional for them, and how this is a part of life, but it's an unmovable fact of your history.
Yeah, and they give it to people for end-of-life treatment.
Yeah.
They'll give them fairly high doses for end-of-life treatment, actually.
And really, I mean, if you're 80 years old and your liver's shutting down and stuff like that, it's like, fuck yeah, let's start experimenting, because what have I got to lose?
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather die in a different dimension.
Well, exactly, right? Yeah. But it's actually huge for neurosynaptic connections, because it actually starts reopening different parts of your mind and
I've heard people say that before.
Yeah, because it kind of gives you a certain level of synesthesia, which is basically your neurons kind of firing over top of each other and your senses kind of intertangling.
That's right, and they kind of cross. Yeah,
right. So, but it also, because of it, it actually helps rewire and open up new connections or rebuild old connections that were there, and then people start getting certain memories back, and certain parts of their understanding or perceiving of the world is actually makes more sense to them. And there's actually been a lot of helpful recovery from people that have Alzheimer's.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
right. So, but they're small and very few and far between tests, but it's like every time we do this, there's almost always positive results.
Yeah, and it's becoming more widespread. I think what needs to happen is more people need to talk about it.
Yeah,
and the more you talk about it, the more you basically bring it into existence.
Well, and normalize it.
Yeah, and normalize it. Exactly. Like, let's remove the stigma from however many generations of people looking at this thing as, a drug.
Yeah,
and start looking at it in kind of a spiritual term, or even if you don't want the spirituality connected to it, you can start looking at it as a medicine.
Yeah,
to actually, like, you can. I'm pretty sure they have ways to extract, I don't know, the psilocin or something.
The psilocybin, yeah,
without having to be like, high.
Yeah,
so you can still get
actually, that fantastic fungus documentary on Netflix, which actually Paul Stamets is one of the main doctors they talked to in that. But yeah, they said like there's certain ways that they've refined DMT and stuff like that to try to get certain parts of the psychoactive parts separated from some of the other parts of it. And it's a good documentary if you haven't seen
that one yet.
It's really interesting in the sense that it's finally being taken as deep as it can go into a lab, and it's like, let's find out what each part of this is, like what each molecule actually does, what similar other natural molecules do things, how can we synthesize certain parts of this where it's still functional and healthy, but maybe it'll give you the good feelings without making you trip balls, kind of thing like that too.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's usually typically why microdosing is good, is because it kind of just give you like a lift, if things become a little bit more vivid.
Without having to be super high.
Yeah, and it doesn't make you trip balls because you're only taking 0.1 of a gram or something like that. Yeah. Which is super low dose for just about everybody.
Yeah.
And it's you may hardly even notice it, or maybe not notice it at all, but it's just like, like this whole week I was microdosing. I did 5 days of 0.1, and I didn't really get angry now that I think about it. Like, I had a pretty calm day. Like, somebody cut me off in traffic, and it's like, maybe they're in a rush, or maybe they didn't see me, or as opposed to instantly on your horn, you fucking,
Yeah, and you usually kind of get that lingering effect as you use them that kind of, helps you chill the fuck out and not lash out at people on the roadway.
Yeah.
I think there's some really serious merit behind wanting to use them medicinally.
Yeah. And I also understand that there's not everybody that can. I mean, there's that may be the trigger that puts them into schizophrenia or
it could be like
split personality or whatever kind of sort of thing too. And they say like they figure like 70% of people can do it with virtually no side effects.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's I mean, you know that these people are, you know, self-harm risks and stuff like that. It's like, well, maybe let's not start with a super high dose with that person then.
Yeah, test it out and see what happens, because like you could have some pretty freaking adverse effects. There's some really hard feelings you have to confront when you're high on mushrooms sometimes. And that's part of the reason why I think people say that they're so scared to try mushrooms, is because you have these really, really intense trips. Where you might think a certain thought and then just go down that rabbit hole of that thought. Like, oh, I'm not good enough, and oh, I feel bad about the person that I am, and I'm guilty, shame. It's a really good space to be able to confront those, because of how vulnerable you are to just the change in psyche in general. How vulnerable you are to yourself. It's fucking weird.
But still, it's tough though too, because it's like you can really fall down a hole. Like I've had a full on panic attack on mushrooms before, and that scared the shit out of me. But at the same time, it's like, yep, I have some shit I need to deal with that I'm trying to run from.
And there's like something obviously there that you needed to confront.
Yeah, and every time since, it's just like, yep, I'm feeling great.
That's more or less what I think to myself when a lot of people tell me, you know, I tried the mushrooms, I didn't like it. It's like, well, you know, you might have had some, you know, scary, dark thoughts that maybe you need to confront. So, like, I know it's fucking scary, and I know it sounds super cultist, because it's, like, easy to go and tell somebody to go and fucking take mushrooms so you can take advantage of them. Take the mushrooms and try to understand what these terrible fucking thoughts are. Because maybe you'll find some clarity in this, you know, higher dimension, the spirit world, whatever you want to call it, to be able to, you know, come to terms with that. I know it's helped me a lot with feelings of shame and guilt. And just, you know, getting over my past of, you know, having this so-called terrible childhood. Like, it really wasn't that bad. It, you know, it's not that uncommon for people to have divorced parents and stuff like that. But it gave me a really good space to be able to reflect and find some clarity and, you know, chill the fuck out and understand that I don't have to be a victim of circumstance. You know?
Well, that's actually probably one of the best parts about it, is that it allows you to let go. Because this isn't helping me. It's not serving anybody. And it doesn't, well, it's not welcome anymore is the other thing. I don't need to think this way. Right?
Does it help you? Exactly.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that there's a lot of that kind of stuff that, well, like you said, I mean, I kind of did the same thing with my oldest brother. Like, we never got along great. I mean, we did when we were growing up decently enough, and then I moved to the city, and we started arguing about everything all the time, and it's like, well, maybe let's just stop talking to each other for a while, so that when we do see each other, we can be civil and have fun together, instead of just down each other's throats all the time for the stupidest fucking things. And it was all stupid. Like, even now when we think about it, it's like, there was no good reason for us to fight about anything.
Even past your teenage years. Hey,
well into our 20s, because he's the one that got me into construction. And, you know, he, as much as I don't like to say it, it's like he took care of me a lot when I first moved here, because I hadn't a fucking clue what it was to live in the city, because I didn't live anywhere else. I went from my parents' farm directly to Calgary. Like, I spent 3.5 weeks in Europe.
Wild.
And there was no culture shock that was comparable to me moving from the farm to Calgary.
Really?
Oh, it was way bigger. But I had no idea. Like, I knew nothing about regular life, let alone city life. And I trusted way too many people, and I got fucked over a lot because of it.
Yeah, because you expect people to be nice.
Because back home, everybody knew everybody, and everybody was just nice, and they reciprocated help. And
it just doesn't work like that.
People see that as weakness and take advantage of it here. So.
They do, man. They really do.
So, and not to say that I fully shut myself off in that way, but there are better ways of doing that, and still, you know, not giving up your entire life and soul to people to, you know, try to make them happy, and then just shit on you anyway. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I understand what I'm doing wrong here now.
I'm trusting you when I shouldn't be,
Yeah, and it was the same thing with my oldest brother. It's like, I got to give him credit. He took care of me really well. He taught me a decent amount about construction, but he learned in a bad way, and he taught me, like, he would call me names and stuff like that, and say, okay, well, now that we've established that I'm a fucking idiot, what did I do wrong? Well, just fucking do it this way. Well, why? Just fucking do it. It's like, well, okay, but if I don't understand what I'm doing, I'm going to ask you the same thing every job
so
we're on.
what's the point? Yeah.
So, and that's the thing too. And honestly, I think because of that, it's part of the reason why I'm a better kung fu teacher and stuff too, is because I don't want to be that guy, and it doesn't help anybody to get mad at somebody that when they don't know what you're talking about even anyway.
Yeah.
So like, so there's no function for anybody at that point. So as much as I look back at some of that stuff and it's like, he was a prick, and it's like, no, he taught me a lot more than I even realized actually because of it. And it's like, okay, so actually I got to thank him.
That's been a big theme of sharing on social media lately, is like, like learning to let go of your past and just being comfortable saying I made these mistakes and that, I can move on. And not holding on to that coal. Jen says that to me a lot, actually. She said it to me quite a few times recently. Stop holding on to that coal. Because obviously I have some pretty wicked drama that went down in my life about 2 years ago. And part of the reason why I'm kind of on this martial arts journey now. But we'll get onto that later.
But that's the other thing, though, too, is like, just because there's connection or familiarity, it doesn't mean there's obligation or necessity to continue. Yeah. Like, just because you're friends with some high school buddy for whatever and you guys were to school forever, it's just like, well, no, he does things that I don't like, and he fucking makes fun of me or tries to tell me going into jiu-jitsu is a fucking waste of my time and I'm a piece of shit for doing it. Yeah. It's like, well, that doesn't feel good. Why am I holding on to this guy that I thought was my friend? Or same thing with my brother. It's like, well, we're family, so we're always going to be a part of each other's lives some way. Mm-hmm. But it's like, with that said, though, too, it's like the less time we spend together, the better we can be friends when we do get together. Totally. We can appreciate each other, sort of thing like that.
Without snapping at each other.
Yeah, like, I'm not going to pretend like we're buddy-buddy and everything's super cool and stuff now, but we're civil with each other. And, we can crack jokes or we talk about the good times that we used to have once in a while. And it's like, okay, yeah, like, we're past this, but the other part is too is that we're both comfortable with not having to be a part of each other's lives. Yeah, and that's fine too.
And having that space.
Yeah, because it's like we're just different people, so that's good. We should be different people.
I've felt that way in the past about my sister and miscommunicating and whatever. We get mad at each other. We still get mad at each other sometimes, but it's like that. Not living with her anymore since she went to university. Mm-hmm. I haven't lived with her since I was like probably 16 years old. When she started going to university and living on her own, our relationship got a lot less about, like who's right and who's wrong and who gets to do the dishes and blah, 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 arguing over chores, and just typical sibling bullshit. And like, it became fun. Like I'd see her and we'd go drinking together. Yeah. I loved her friends because they were all, super... They just loved me, and so I loved them. Yeah. And we had some good times together. It was like a way better relationship than my, early teenage years, because of course my sister's 3 years older than me, so like obviously the most emotional times of our lives. Yeah. Her in her teenage years, me in my, younger teenage, preteen, early teenage years. And then of course, like our parents splitting up and all the fucking back and forth wacky bullshit that happened there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but you get to that point sort of thing too where it's like, am I still looking at this like I'm 17?
Yeah. Oh, seriously, man. I still have thoughts sometimes and I'm like, okay, like that's unreasonable. Like, don't say that to your sister because, like you love her to death and you literally do anything for her.
Yeah, and I've caught myself doing that. I'll say or do something just because I know it's going to hurt them. It's like, oh, that's the fucking stupidest thing I've done.
Yeah, we still do that to each other sometimes. Yeah. That's what siblings are going to do sometimes.
And that's the thing too, is that you can dig into her in no way, like nobody can get to her like you can.
Yeah, right. Basically. I wouldn't want to. But
yeah. and that's exactly what it is for my oldest brother and I. There's certain things that I can say to him that'll cut him to his core. And it's something that I could say to anybody and they would just laugh it off. But because I say it to him a certain way,
it hurts.
It hurts. And he does the same thing to me and he knows he can. But we try not to do that to each other because it's not helpful. It's not serving either of us. And we've gotten better about it where we'll throw a jab out sort of thing like that. And it's like, oh, that hurt because it's true. It's like, yeah, you got me good, you fucker.
I don't like being so combative anymore with my sister and my family in general. Like it's just, it's so fruitless. It's like, it's not the Michael Rizopoulos that's going to bring about a better future for himself and the world around him and the people around him. Like, you know, it just doesn't serve me. Anger definitely has its place, and it's kind of, I think it's a little bit silly to say that like anger is useless, because it definitely has its uses.
Absolutely.
And mainly as a telltale sign of something needs to change.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it from that perspective. But yeah, I totally
and it kind of
understand.
I always like the idea of how a lot of things can be brought down to love or fear. Because love and fear are actual opposites of each other.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting too, because, well, like relationship kind of things like that, people get, you know, like romantic type relationships where there's, you know, judgment and resentment and jealousy and frustration and all these sort of things like that. It's like, those aren't love. Those have their own names and their own types of feeling because they're their own things. Don't confuse that with love.
Yeah.
Love is its own pure, joyful thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's something that you truly feel, not just something that you say. Right? And I've had to get myself out of that too, because on the other side of it, it's the sort of thing too. It's like, I'm in lust with this person.
Yeah.
Which, like, let's be honest about where I'm at with this. Am I still gonna?
You look good.
Yeah.
I want to get up in there.
Yeah, exactly, right? And it's just like, I want to smash the ass off of somebody or whatever sort of thing. It's like, and it's going to be great. And it's like, she's going to let me keep doing this. But in 6 months, it's like, okay, that spark is starting to fade now. It's like, that was never love in the first place. That was a chemical reaction.
I'm just here for your body.
Yeah, it was a chemical reaction that was enjoyable. And it's like, oh, now I got to start, like, keep talking to this person. It's like, oh yeah, this is definitely not love.
Yeah. And then you like kind of start to realize like you just don't have anything to say to that person.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's like, if you can get past those parts and everything still works out decently and stuff. And again, it's never going to be all happy all the time, and honestly kind of shouldn't be. But if you can be honest with yourself about how everything's feeling, how everything's moving in a certain direction, but knowing full well that there are ups and downs in every relationship.
Yeah, man.
So whether it's romantic or family or whatever type of relationship, it's like, let's call these feelings what they are.
Yeah.
And it's like, we can cut down to the very deepest roots of, yes, this is very likely either just love or just fear, and then whatever branches from that. But it's like, well, I'm not afraid, I'm angry. It's okay, but you're angry because you're afraid of something. Mm-hmm. You're afraid to open up, or you're afraid of what they said to you might be right, or what they did was dangerous. Like, I got angry driving over here because somebody was weaving through traffic and stuff like that. And it's like, it makes me angry, but it's like, I'm also afraid for my safety and everybody else's. And that's actually why I'm pissed off.
That's why you're pissed. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, sense. Yeah. Right. Same as like, you're proud of somebody. It's like, well, that's its own form of love. You know, like, there's romantic love, there's compassionate love, there's platonic love, you know, but it's like this, I feel an enjoyable engagement towards what you're doing or who you are or what you can accomplish, kind of thing like that.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't have to always just be like, ooh, fucking love, kind of stuff either. Right. Because that's more like lust, which, and again, is its own form of love, but it is a chemical driven love that will fade.
Short term, yeah.
Right. So it's like, be aware of what that love can be too.
Totally.
And if you feel it fading, is that turning into fear now? Because it's like, I don't want this to go away. Right. And it's interesting because it's like, well, that's an obviously very simple way of looking at stuff. It's like, yeah, but I mean, again, like, are you strong enough to be vulnerable to actually dig into yourself to say,
it's simple, but exactly, it allows you the opportunity to be honest with yourself. And it makes sense to put things in terms like that, because then you can look at the way that you act in the world around you and say, well, you know, that wasn't out of love.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I hate polarizing things.
Yeah.
Because almost every aspect of our life lives on some level of a spectrum.
Yeah.
But I mean, to polarize it in those degrees, but to also know that it's not just pure love or not just pure fear. It's something in that nebulous direction of more positivity or more negativity kind of thing too. But it's like, again, it's that good and bad sort of thing, or yes or no, or up or down. It's like, well, no, it's not just these direct finite things.
Yeah.
Right.
And it gives a definition to like the extremes of our emotions, so it's much easier for us to relate to that and put it in terms that make sense with each other, you know.
Yeah.
It does suck to polarize things. I'm not a fan of polarizing things, but like I do it on the daily, even though I try as hard as I can not to.
Yeah.
It's just a simple fundamental difference in beliefs between people that you know, want to polarize things. It's almost unavoidable.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another part of it too, is that there is no topic that everybody fully agrees on.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything that people do.
Totally.
Right? And I've racked my brain. And it's like,
I mean,
even
I can think of a topic that people would fully agree on, but for the most part,
I guarantee you don't though.
I bet you if I dug into it, you're probably right, I don't.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is, for the most part, when it comes to those topics, it's a lot of sheep following the same path as the people in front of them. It's like a lemming jumping off of a cliff. A whole bunch of fucking lemmings are going to go follow that lemming off the cliff.
Yeah, well, that's with the whole lemming mentality too, where it's just like, well, if I follow, it doesn't matter what we're going to do, as long as I follow, though, I'm not going to get in trouble. Yeah,
exactly. Or the whole crowd won't rat me out or whatever. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, because if we all die together, that's okay. But if I die by myself, that's embarrassing.
Yeah. People who really strongly, that is embarrassing. The fuck did Jim just do? What the hell?
Yeah.
I think if people who really, really want to be polarized to one end of the spectrum or the other would start to understand that you can have variances in your beliefs. Mm-hmm. From man to man, when you can, or woman to woman, person to person. I got it.
I don't want to assume anyone's gender.
I got the pronoun. Person to person. You know, you can really start to kind of absolve the mentality of wanting to impress people and wanting to make decisions that other people are making for you, essentially, by wanting to identify with a certain belief. Did that make sense?
Yeah, and actually the thing that actually drew me to that idea is, or what made me think as soon as you said that, was that's actually a growing, evolved idea from what we all think when we're in high school, is that there's that level of popularity. Everybody wants to be popular, everyone wants to be liked. You want to be part of the in crowd kind of thing like that. But how do you do that? Not everybody can just be cool and smooth and talented and stuff like that, right? Yeah. So most of us got to try to be a part of the in-group.
Yeah.
But not realizing that everybody else isn't cool. They're just as nervous and fucking a mess of, what do I do? How do I stay on top of stuff?
If anything, they're worse.
Yeah. And the people that are at the top, unless they're like narcissists, they think they deserve all the adulation that they get. It's like every one of us has self-doubt.
Yeah.
And it's not like it goes away. And if it does, again, you're probably a narcissist.
Or mentally unhealthy in a different capacity.
Yeah. Right? So, or a sociopath or something.
Yeah.
Where feelings don't really matter.
No, that makes sense. Like, I wouldn't want to... I couldn't imagine completely losing that sense, because then you just...
Yeah.
Like...
Well, You basically fail the psychopath test instantly when you start talking about empathy.
Yeah.
Because psychopaths don't have empathy.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And then if you can't relate to your fellow man, you don't have empathy either.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see...
More likely to be a danger.
Yeah. You can see what their feelings are, and you can use their feelings against them to manipulate them.
Yeah.
And you see that's actually a big part of the reason why a lot of the CEOs of big business actually don't pass the psychopath test, or they score well on it, whichever way. Like, they're more psychopathic than, because they're willing to step on anybody's neck to stay on the top,
without creating sustainable means to be able to do that.
Yeah, right. So, and there's a lot of benefit to that in certain ways, and there's a lot of good things that can come from that to a degree, right? Because like anything, you get too much of anything, it's not necessarily going to be a good thing anymore.
No, exactly.
Right. So and I mean, you see that with, somebody like Trump, best man ever. Just ask him.
Ask him.
Yeah, he'll tell you all about it, right?
Hell yeah, that's so funny.
But it's like, well, I mean, he's stayed in power for a term. he's still something of a billionaire. People still absolutely fucking love him.
Yeah.
Not everybody, but who's to say what he's doing is actually completely wrong? Lots of people shouted from the rooftops, but that doesn't mean they're right either. So
it doesn't mean they're right.
Right, and and like anything too, I mean, when you start talking about politics and stuff like that, it's like, well, all of them are the same. They talk about being on one side or the other, but it's like, when they actually get in power, they all do the same shit anyways.
Yeah, more or less. Right? They want to keep their term. They want that income. It's usually, what's the term? A career politician. It's usually a career politician.
Yeah.
And when I look at political parties, it's hard to look at a political party and say, well, that's the one for me. Because, like, my belief is really, truly that if you think a political party can make a difference in the world, I think you need to be a little bit more introspective, look in yourself, and try to find the reasons why you think that won't work. And it mostly comes down to just kind of basic human emotion. How fucking greedy are you? Mm-hmm. That's what it feels like to me. You look at politicians, and I know a lot of people use this analogy. Thinking that a political party cares about you is like thinking that the fucking stripper likes you. 100%.
Yeah.
That's just what it feels like to me. And that's, kind of the way I approach politics.
Yeah.
Because it's so silly. And I watch, like, a lot of my family, a lot of my aunts and uncles are like, fucking blue, red. And you're like, okay, like.
Yeah, you know that
you
it
really
matter.
think that's going to help improve your quality of life? I think what's going to improve your quality of life is being introspective and looking at your life and understanding what you can actually control and do to make a difference.
Well, and usually when people talk about politics, it's like, yeah, but that's not the part of the government that actually does anything. Mm-hmm. Those are the figureheads that we get to point at the television and say, he's an asshole or he's a great guy.
Yeah, he's just the face, right?
Right. It's nothing. That's not even the part of the government you'd ever deal with. It's the Tuesday afternoon. This is Canadian Revenue Agency. I need to talk to this person. It's that faceless part of the government that you deal with that never changes.
The fucking bureaucracy pool. Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Right, so it doesn't matter who's in power. And I mean, even the person that's in power, I mean, hierarchies are not built up to one person. It looks like they are, but they're not.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if he starts pissing off the people that helped get him into place, he's not going to stay in that place for long either.
No, exactly.
Right, so he's got to do a few things to keep everybody else happy, so he stays in power, but he can't keep them too happy because then they'll overthrow him.
Career politicians, man.
Right?
Follow the money trail.
And, well, actually, and I always love telling people to, if they can, get the audiobook or the actual hard copy of Dictator's Handbook, how bad behavior is almost always good politics.
Yeah.
That's the name of the book, and it is a fucking amazing book. Because it doesn't, I mean, to a degree there will be some bias in it, but it tries to lay out things as they happened, not as like a one political side or the other sort of thing like that. And listening through it, and it's just like, well, of course Trump got into power. Like, obviously he got into power.
Look at him,
like,
yeah.
Like, it only makes sense that he would win.
Yeah,
like he couldn't actually have lost when you think about it. Because it's like, he's a billionaire that bought his presidency. Of course he's in power. He 100%. Said exactly the right things to the right people, and they fucking loved him for it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I don't care how crazy he is. I know he's going to pass the bills that I want, so I can go over to New Guinea and exploit the shit out of those people.
Yeah, man. Look at Trudeau. Trudeau did the same thing. He appealed to a certain group of people. They said, holy fuck, this guy's awesome.
Yep.
Obviously, the fucking majority of votes come out of Eastern Canada, which is ridiculous.
Yep.
As if I should even care.
Yeah. But I mean, that's exactly it. Like, you and I that don't even give a fuck about politics are talking about it. But it's one of those things that
I'll still talk about it. It's just
it's the lack of useful function of it. Because it's a lot of showboating, and there's a ton of fucking money that's spent on things that don't matter when that same money could be put into actual healthcare, functional education. Like, why aren't we doing these things to actually help our existing people or the future of our country?
Totally.
But no, let's spend $1 billion on an election.
Yeah.
Well, why?
I know, it seems
Wasn't Trudeau the guy talking about getting rid of single-use plastics? How many of his fucking signs were across the country?
Mm-hmm. Why are there still
right?
single-use plastics?
Right? And it's just it. It's just like, well, if you actually want to be an environmentalist, then do the environmental thing. You know, like actually do the things that you got onto your platform to do. But it's like, again, that's not why he's there.
No, he's there for money.
Like, just like everybody. So that's the reality of it that I think a lot of people continue to fall down on. It's just, it is a system of control. It's not a terrible one, because I think, well, the people that are like, oh, let's tear it all down. Anything that rises from the ashes is going to be better. And it's like, that is such a fucking short-sighted way of looking at things.
I don't know. That is pretty short-sighted, because if you think about the way that people are naturally, what happens when you need to survive? What happens when you have zero government service, no law, and just, how many people live in Canada? 8 million? Something like that.
Canada?
Yeah.
37 million.
Fuck, I was so far off. 37 million people running around, zero laws. Think about that. No rules.
Yeah. Well, that's what I always think when they say, like, tear it down. It's like, okay, but me and my brother are big people.
Yeah.
And we're not going to go hungry.
Yeah.
So if you think that I'm not going to walk down the street and make sure that I survive, you're fucking mistaken.
Yeah.
Because if push comes to shove, I'm going to be nice as I can, but I'm going to fucking eat by the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that's the thing. It's like, it comes down to survival. It's like, sorry, I have a fucking plan and you're not a part of it.
Exactly. And like, that's your choice and your decision. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think we should be looking for alternatives to like widespread governance. Like, it'd be cool to see like...
Well, actual egalitarian government would make sense.
What's that?
Well, actual democracy where there isn't a single person in power. Mm-hmm. You have heads of like certain important aspects of what you need to have a society, a government, a country run. And then each of those person, when it becomes their turn for their thing to be the most important, they somewhat take a little bit of control, or they at least guide the group into the direction that we should be going. Mm-hmm. But that person isn't by themselves, because they are working on as a committee,
making democratic decisions,
making a decision that's like, and the best way to say it's like, okay, well, during wartime we're going to have our war committee take care of the country for offense and defense and stuff like that. Okay, well, war's over, now we need to get into rebuilding. So the rebuilding community gets together, they start organizing, planning, pointing arrows and stuff like that. But it's like, the warriors don't necessarily have to be finished. Mm-hmm. Like, they're very specific at that, but it's like it's not like they can't help with rebuilding.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? Or, it's like, okay, well, now that we've got everything up and running, now it's like our food and our water isn't as clean or as fresh or as healthy as it could be. So now we start working on food, health, shelter kind of thing like that, or like those basic sort of thing like that. Yeah. So that committee starts taking lead and pushing sort of thing like that. But it's like, you don't need somebody at the top saying, you go to this, you go to that. It's like, we're all smart enough that we can figure out what's a good idea for society.
Totally.
Right? And if you get a group of 6 people, they're going to have way better understanding of what a single problem is than one person is trying to figure out the whole thing by themselves.
Yeah, because then you're like compartmentalizing. It kind of turns into a hierarchy, but you're compartmentalizing people and groups based on their strong suits and what they're good at. Like, obviously, if you live in an anarchaic society, for example, and somebody's good at fucking building sheds, well, he could be the shed committee.
Yeah. Well, exactly, right?
Decides how we build sheds.
But it's like, when people talk about like fully tearing things down, it's like, well, okay, but I mean, that's the thing, is that everything's going to be lawless. Everything's going to be whatever the fuck you can get your hands on.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. It's like, well, do you not think the people that own a lot of guns aren't going to create their own militia and take what they need as well?
Yeah.
What happened to all of a sudden your safety and security that you had no fucking idea what you actually had even?
Personally,
all of that's gone.
Exactly. Your home's gone, your food's gone, you're running water.
Yeah.
Personally, it'd be super idealistic to have a world like that. But the only problem is the human aspect. And, even if things were spread evenly, we're not very kind to each other. And it's like, it takes an immense amount of effort for somebody to admit responsibility for something and say, okay, well, I fucked up. I don't know why. It's just the way that we are. And I see it in myself day to day. I see it in other people day to day.
Well, the other part is too is that some people are leaders and some people are followers.
Yeah.
And the thing is too is that let's say if we leveled the playing field where everybody in Canada had $10,000, every single person, within, I bet you not more than 2 years, there would be multimillionaires again, and there'd be fucking destitute people.
Yeah, it'd be the same.
It would just go completely back to what it is, because it's like some people don't want that responsibility, or in some cases aren't physically capable of protecting themselves. So it's like, I gotta pay this person to take care of me. Mm-hmm. You know, or I don't know how to cook. Like literally, I can't cook. I don't know how. So you have to pay somebody to do that. But it's like, I can build or something or whatever. So it's like, okay, well, you have your function, but it's like, again, like the money still has to come from somewhere then too, because money is a necessity with our way of living now too.
Yeah.
Because we can't go backwards. Like, and there's no way of setting up a barter system that's going to make it work. Right? Because they talk about that actually in Sapiens, that by Yuval Harari. That's a really good book too. Yeah, and they talk about like if you had a barter system, it's like, say you're an apple farmer and you need to get your shoes fixed, but the shoemaker doesn't like apples, so you have to go talk to somebody else that has something that he wants, and then it's like now you have to exchange a dozen different things just to get a few things that you wanted.
Yeah.
Well, if you have money, it's the same currency, so you can spend it on everything.
But there's no middleman.
But there's no middleman to fuck with, right? So money is a really good idea.
Yeah, I think money is a good idea.
But the other thing is too is that wouldn't it be cool if we could live more like a Star Trek future where there is no money, but everything's run like it's a technologically run society.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's good in theory as well. But what are the downfalls of that?
Because, but then you start getting into like social credit, which is a fucking scary thought.
Yeah, there's some of that, but there's also some people where it's just like, I can do as much science, or I can build as big of machines as I want. I can actually build spaceships and go build moon colonies or Mars colonies and stuff like that. And I don't have to worry about where the resources are coming from. Fucking sweet. But then there's also the other side of it where it's just like, oh, I'm going to drink myself to death. Or totally. I'm going to be the biggest, best fucking drug lord ever, sort of thing like that, or whatever sort of situation.
All over the galaxy.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's going to be other people that are, and there's going to be tons of people where it's just like, I'm just going to get food and shelter, and I don't have to do anything ever again.
And hunker down, yeah.
I'd say okay, and there'd be like 30% of society would just fall off. But then you think about it, and it's like, well, there's a lot of those people that are like that anyways. You know, and not saying that they choose to be on welfare, but some people do. They do choose to be on welfare. They choose to not do anything. They choose to fall into some bad addictions. Not everybody does, but some people absolutely choose to not do anything. Mm-hmm. You know, and if it's been given the opportunity, it's like, well, their lives aren't really going to change anyway. So that doesn't move the needle anywhere. So it doesn't, you know, and same ideas like, or the universal basic income idea, where everybody's given like $1,000 a month. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Because it's like, it'll take some of the cares away for certain people, but it's like, it's a waste of money to give it to a millionaire.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, but is it though? Because then like we have to level the playing field. And if it's just something that he can basically add to his taxes or whatever, and it goes back to the government or uses as a charitable donation, and that's actually gone to the food bank and they buy $1,000 worth of food, he gets a tax write-off, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But it's like that money's actually gone to something functional now, though, right? As opposed to him just pocketing it, or the government just holding on to it and doing nothing with it functional. Because there's a lot of that kind of shit too. So, but again, it's like there's always fucking loopholes and problems with everything, because it doesn't matter what you do, people will find the best way to utilize it to their advantage.
Totally.
Right? So it's like, what's the right answer? And the answer is, there is no right answer.
There is no right answer, man. It'd be awesome if you could rely on people to be as kind as you are, or as thoughtful as you are, you know. But
on certain days.
On certain days, yeah. I hope that you're in a good fucking mood. But it's like, you know, like politically, people are going to make the choices that they're going to make anyways.
Yeah.
You know, like I saw a post that somebody made earlier today talking about, I think, abortion specifically. It's like, you know, you can make abortion unsafe. You can make drug use unsafe.
Yeah.
There's no taking it away. You can make it harder for that person to use them. They're probably still going to use them.
Yeah.
You know, like real change comes from the person alone, and that's their decision to make. You can't really coax or force somebody into that. I mean, you can certainly force somebody into that, actually.
Yeah.
But what good is that going to do them?
Yeah, well, exactly. Especially the war on drugs.
Yeah.
They spent way over $1 billion on it.
And it failed.
And they're still failing.
And now I can go walk down the street and buy a fucking joint and smoke it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah. It's
legally.
They're going completely the wrong direction on that, and they're just, oh no, we got to double down on this now. We got to make sure that we stop everything. Yeah. Okay, so what happens then? People start concentrating their things because it's easier to ship higher concentrations of smaller amounts of things. Mm-hmm. So it's easier to get across borders, and it's easier to move around, and then you have to cut it to make more of the product. But it's like then you're starting to cut other shit into it, then it's not healthy anymore.
Yeah, because
it's not regulated.
That's why we see the fentanyl use in Canada.
Well, and that's why prohibition was such a fucking failure 100 years ago.
The prohibition of alcohol.
Yeah, it's like you're going to stop people from drinking alcohol. It's like no, you're going to stop being able to sell it to them. They're going to make it themselves, and what happened? People drank themselves blind or killed themselves because they don't know how to distill things properly.
That made it unsafe.
It made it super unsafe.
Yeah.
Exactly like you were saying. So it's just like, well, then why are we doing this? No, the government needs to step in and regulate these things so it's all safe again. Right? So it's like, well, then why is anything illegal? Shouldn't prostitution, all drugs, alcohol? Well, not murder. I mean,
I'm joking.
Yeah. Well, it's the thing too. It's like, well, murder maybe, depending on who we're talking about. And one that I'll get back to that, but but it's that idea. It's like, well, if these things are all regulated and funded properly and taken care of, it's all going to be safer for these people. Women can actually work in places where they're safe to do prostitution, where it's healthy, they have a place to do it where it's comfortable, and it's like most women that do it don't necessarily want to do it anyway. They do it because it's an option, but the other side of it too, it's just like, well, there's gals in university or whatever that are like, well, I need to make a few extra bucks, I'm going to fuck guys anyway, so they might as well pay me for it. Mm-hmm. Well,
it is the oldest known trade,
right? And there's nothing wrong with that. People are going to fuck anyways.
Yeah,
it's human nature that they're going to have sex. So why is it illegal? Or because a camera is there. Now it's art and it's pornography, so it's not illegal anymore. So I can exchange as much money as I want now, right? So there's a loophole there, but at the same time, it's not an easy one because you got to prove a lot of shit to say that it is. But at the same token, it's the same thing with alcohol and drugs and stuff like that. It's like, like you said, it's unsafe because we're forcing it into the dark. Mm-hmm. Well, you shine a light on it, you make it safe, easy, clean, and more often than not, most of the people that are on this shit don't want to be on it. I mean, where did the opioid crisis come from? That wasn't from fucking street dealers. That was from Big Pharma and the governments.
Yeah, man. How do you think it's getting into fucking circulation?
Yeah, and then what happened to the Hippocratic Oath? That each and every doctor has to swear on, saying that I will do no harm. Mm-hmm. It's like, you guys helped fucking kill how many people because of this opioid, and now that we have a pandemic, opioid usage has gone up by 30%.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Yeah.
So what are we doing? That's not help. Like the idea of all this sort of stuff where it's like, again, well, no, greed is what's important. Our bottom line is what's important. When people try to tell me human life matters, it's like, give me a fucking break.
Yeah. I mean, a human life can matter.
It's supposed to, but it doesn't.
Yeah, to me, human life matters. It's all perspective, right?
Well, to those in power, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah. But I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about, like, people taking responsibility for the world around them and for the decisions that they can make and, controlling what they can control. Not being pieces of shit to each other. Like, it's not, it seems like it's not that much to ask, but I mean, apparently it is, because I still have my moments where I'm like, fuck, I'm going to fucking strangle you. But,
well, and again, when it comes into power and control and stuff like that, it doesn't really matter how good and altruistic you want to be. The very next person standing behind you, it's like, I'll take whatever payoff you want to change whatever laws you need.
Yeah.
Because that's the other part too, is like, governments don't really run the world. Businesses do.
Yep. businesses. Government itself is a business.
Governments are there to make laws so that each of them can make more money.
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
Fuck, eh?
And that's the thing. It's just like, well, why would I hire, or why would we actually deport all of the illegal immigrants?
Yeah.
We make a lot of money on them.
Yeah.
We get a lot of cheap labor from them. So we'll point the finger and it's like, oh, you should do this the right way, this and that, blah, blah, blah. You really want to get rid of these people, though? They're the ones that fucking make your food and shine your shoes and put your suits together and clean your house and stuff like that. You know, again, not us, because we're those people that are eating those shit sandwiches a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You and I specifically, but it's like we're not in that Canadian 1% or North American 1% kind of thing like that.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, well, yeah, it kind of sucks when you're at the bottom looking up, but at the same time, then you start getting a little bit successful, and it's like, no, I'm okay with capitalism. I get it.
I think Jordan Peterson says it too. Like, it's not a perfect system.
Yeah.
But he says, at least it brings about wealth.
Yeah. Well, and he also says, too, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We've built this entire society from what it is that we knew, and it's taken a long time to get it to this point, and it works really well.
Yeah.
Unemployment.
I mean, considering what a fucking mess the human race is.
Well, yeah.
And who we are as individuals.
Well, and considering we went through, well, we're still in a pandemic, but I've been able to eat bananas the entire time.
Yeah.
You know,
that hasn't stopped.
Like our flow of food has not slowed down even really.
No, not really.
How is that possible when the world shut down?
Yeah.
It's because we're living in a privileged fucking country.
Oh,
it's not white privilege or the individual privilege. It's like North America is a very fucking privileged place to be.
Yeah.
And if we're lucky enough to live here, not everybody's privileged. I get it. There are absolutely fucking poor, destitute, unhealthy people that get a bum rap right from the word go, but the vast majority of people that live in North America have a pretty fucking good life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so
man,
it's
even when you're at the low end of the totem pole. Like,
yeah.
Me and you are probably fucking, lower middle class, and
yeah.
I haven't gone hungry during the pandemic, man.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I mean, North America is also a very expensive place to be poor. Mm-hmm. I understand that, which is it's an oxymoron, but it's absolutely what it is, because
definitely kind of ass backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't have anything, you're never going to get anything unless you have some good run of luck a lot of the time, because it's not, you can work your ass off and still not get anywhere.
Luck or understanding how to set your apathy aside and making better decisions. Because everybody has an opportunity, and it's true that not everybody is privileged. But given that opportunity, it's so easy for me to sit here and be like, well, why can't, you just buck up? You're just a drug addict. And right? Like, it's super easy to sit here and say something like that. Yeah. And I don't have any firsthand experience, or maybe a very minimal firsthand experience with things like addiction. So it's easy for us to sit here and tell the drug user to just, smarten the fuck up. Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that's again one of those things where drug addiction, addiction in general, it's something that it's not understood by the vast majority of people properly, because it's a stigmatism that, again, it's put on the drugs, and it's like, this is a bad person, they're a criminal, they're fucking worthless or whatever sort of thing. Yeah. No,
they're not a bad person.
Most of these people don't even want to be on these drugs, and it's not the addiction to the drug or to the alcohol or to the gambling or the pornography or the gaming or whatever they're doing. It's the chemical reaction. It's that instant dopamine shot that you get because this thing that you're doing instantly makes you feel better.
Yeah.
And it's a quick spike, and it drops quickly, so you got to keep doing more of it to get that spike back.
And if you don't, you'll fucking die.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that how we want cravings to work is the opposite of how they actually work, right? Because you have to take more drugs, you have to drink more, you have to gamble harder. And it's like, well, now I'm chasing that high of whatever situation it is, sort of thing like that. But it's like you want those things to get even more intense and last longer. It's like, well, they don't get more intense; they don't last longer. That's why you got. That's why you got to continue to chase it, and it gets deeper and deeper. And for every time you go high, you drop lower than your normal was before.
Yeah.
And then when you get high, it's not quite as high as the first time, but you drop even lower than the last time you dropped. And it's just that constant up and then down and up and down and down and down and down and down. And after a while, you just get to the point where it's just like, I need to do fucking heroin just to feel normal.
Fuck, yeah.
And it's like, holy fuck.
Like alcoholism. Alcoholism's a really prevalent one, too.
Yeah, and that's even worse because it's legal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's advertised everywhere.
And the treatment for a legal drug like that isn't even there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's always another fucking weird one too. It's like, oh yeah, these fucking drug addicts are fucking pathetic, whatever. And it's like, okay, but it's okay for you to drink your drugs?
Yeah. Hey man, I used to think like that. I used to just look at drug addicts and be like, "Ooh, you're a fuck up." And,
yeah.
But it's like, no, like that person's not a fuck up. Like they need the space and the support to be able to like pull themselves up and out of that, and you have the opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, as somebody who likes to use drugs, like I love using mushrooms, I love smoking weed, I like dropping acid, man. I like drugs. There's no simpler term for these things than drugs. They're mood altering substances.
Yeah.
It's super hypocritical for me to have thought like that in the past.
Yeah.
Is that appropriate or fair for me to have said that? Not really.
No.
No,
and I get that, man. And I was working with a guy, and we'll go over to his place after work when we're having beers, and his dealer shows up, whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, it's fucking coke and crack dealer, fucking piece of shit or whatever, sort of thing like that, and he can see like I'm giving the fucking dirty eye and sort of thing like that. It's like, fuck's your problem? Oh. And it's like, I don't like your type of person, man.
Yeah.
It's like, the fuck do you think you are? It's like, well, somebody that works for a living. It's like, and I don't? And you do what? Mm-hmm. $4,000 a month? 6 if you're lucky? I make $40,000 a month.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, go fuck yourself. I'm going to live the life that I want, and I'm going to fucking enjoy it. And if I die, who gives a shit? Or if I go to jail, I'm not going to be there very long. It's Canada.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck do you think I'm doing? It's like, I don't push drugs. I don't have to. People come to me. And it's like, yeah, fuck you. And I just doubled down on it, and then I thought about it afterwards. And it's like, yeah, I'm making a fraction of the money. I'm struggling to pay my taxes. I'm fucking caught between a rock and a hard place half the time, especially if I have a vehicle breakdown and I don't have money to get together to fucking buy a new one. It's just
living
like
paycheck to paycheck. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, he's living the life he wants. He's totally fine with going to jail, because if anything, it actually gives him more street cred and stuff like that. And,
yeah, totally.
And it's like, I'm not going to say it's for me, but I'm not going to say what he's doing is wrong necessarily, because if he's not selling the drugs, somebody else is going to sell them. Somebody else is going to buy them from that person.
Somebody else is going to buy them.
Because it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm kind of looking at this like a fucking child still, aren't I?
Yeah. Well, and I bet you if you think about the way that he thinks, he probably feels really marginalized, and he probably feels like he has to keep his head on a swivel all the time, because it's like,
yeah, it's not an easy life, for sure.
Oh, for sure. But he didn't have any alternatives. He didn't see any other way, and he saw this and he went, oh, fuck yeah. Like, that's a fucking awesome deal.
Well, yeah, and again, like, I'm immediately projecting. It's like, well, how could somebody do that? Yeah. Thinking it's like, oh, he definitely grew up with a loving mom and dad like I did, and he got to play all the sports and eat all the food that he wanted. Oh, what are the chances that he had even one of those things?
Yeah.
Pretty slim.
Low, I bet
Pretty
you.
Fucking slim, actually.
Yeah, so I bet you he probably had a really rough fucking childhood and even rougher teenage years and things like that. Like he probably developed into this, hard-ass hustler.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, well, that's not even a life I even fucking understand, so how can I say any of it's wrong?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, like we talked about earlier, $1 billion fighting people like that, and they haven't done a fucking thing to them yet.
Yeah, man. They're untouchable, basically.
Well, yeah. And it's like, yeah, the whole idea of the Hydra kind of thing, like you cut off one head and 2 more pop up.
Yeah, man.
But shit's always going to be around.
Yeah.
People are always going to want to get fucked up. And it's just, and I get it too, but I mean, that's also why addiction needs to be understood properly though too, when people don't want to do those things. It's like, okay, well, what can I do that I'm not doing this? And that's why a big part of the opioid uptick went so high, is because it's like, well, I can't go anywhere. And at least if I'm doing a little bit of drugs or I'm getting drunk once in a while, at least I feel good, like I don't get fucking suicidal or something.
Yeah, by the way, have some money from the government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's just it. But it's like, yeah, well, the liquor store's open, fast food's open, but I can't go to the gym and get a fucking sweat and make myself feel like I'm good, and like I need that sweat. I need somebody to yell at me in a group of 10 other people so that we get ourselves in shape.
Yeah.
I need that fucking drive. I sit around and some people do, they sit around in office all fucking day. I haven't used my body at all. My brain's fatigued. My body's ready to fucking go.
Yeah.
I don't have that expulsion of energy and stuff like that. It's all these mental and physical health things that work together, but it's just like, oh, that's not important. Like Nenshi even said that. And it's like, oh, small businesses or gyms or whatever, like none of that shit's important.
He basically did say that, didn't he?
He almost said it. Well, I don't remember the wording about it, but it's like none of that stuff's going to help the economy or anybody's mental health. And it's like, holy fuck.
Ignorant, right? Yeah.
It's just.
It's been really frustrating.
It may not be your experience, but it's like to say that physical fitness isn't good for business or mental health is fucking laughable.
Yeah.
Like, who do you think you're talking to?
You know, like you could.
This was in Olympic City. You remember that, right?
Yeah. It was. Yeah.
It was supposed to be in
30 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was supposed to be 4 years from now. I'll get into that in a second. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say you take away everything from a lot of people's lives, and sometimes, you know, that one thing that they hold on to is like the gym. Like, you could take fucking everything away from me, but you are not taking my martial arts. There's no fucking way you're gonna stop me from training jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts. You just couldn't stop me. That's my drug. That's my addiction.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, if you remove the means of me to be able to do that, I'm just going to go do fucking jiu-jitsu in a public space.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'm going to go set up my mats in the middle of the mall.
Yeah.
Because I'm allowed to be there.
Yeah. Again, it's like, do you want me to do this in the proper gym?
Yeah.
Where it's safe and comfortable, or you want me to do this in kind of an uncontrolled area where somebody's baby might run in here and get fucking into the scrap somehow?
I mean, that's like ridiculously unlikely.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Just as a talking point to point out the fucking hypocrisy in that.
And it's just so silly. It's, I don't know. And again, it's like me, like, openly criticizing him. It's like, well, no, I don't think anybody's really shown him the importance of what physical health or fitness can be to people. Maybe not you specifically, Nahid Nenshi. Maybe not your thing. Maybe there's some heart condition he has where he can't actually get his heart rate past 120 for all I know. I don't actually know. Like I'm speculating, but maybe there are certain things that it's just simply better for certain people to not do certain things. I get that. Mm-hmm. But to say, to paint it with that whiter brush to say it's no benefit for anybody anywhere, that's fucked.
You got to kind of believe that he's doing the best. He did the best that he could with the information that he had. I mean,
yeah. Well, and again, somebody else that was, he won 3 elections before he got out.
Yeah, I'm assuming as far as mayors go, like Nenshi must have been a good mayor. I didn't really fucking pay attention to much.
No, but again, like it's one thing to get in, and he made change happen when he got in, sort of thing like that. But again, to stay in power, you have to keep other people happy.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, well, we'll keep funding you. We're going to keep you in power, but you're going to change some laws for us, or you're going to let a few things slide.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just like, and to a point, it's like, how much of your soul do you have to sell before you say it's like, no, this is enough.
Then it gets
either I can't do this anymore, or I'm going to fucking start turning everybody in and myself.
Yeah.
You know, so and nobody almost ever turns himself in, so they quit, right? So
yeah, and that's how you get the fucking old boys club mentalities.
Yeah.
People got dirt on each other.
Yeah, or the Epstein Island.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was leaning towards there. Yeah,
exactly,
shit
and
like
that's.
That.
And it's funny too, in the sense that it was a surprise to people that something like that was happening. Mm-hmm. I thought when I heard about that, it's like, did somebody think this was a new thing, or? Yeah, like there aren't.
It's so unbelievable that there aren't like super rich elites out there, like abusing young women and men.
Doing whatever the fuck they want because they can.
It's fucked
because they quite literally have more power than any other person on the planet.
So I don't know if you've heard about Blizzard at the Comic-Cons. They've got a pretty dark history with sexual abuse and a long list of suicides associated with these abuse cases.
Wow.
Victims killing themselves because of the amount of abuse that they've gone under. And so Blizzard who's Wizards of the Coast, which is a fucking big company, which, you know, does like Magic the Gathering and a whole bunch of this other stuff.
Well, they do Warcraft and StarCraft
and BattleNet, which is now associated with Call of Duty.
Yeah. Yeah, they're fucking huge.
They're huge, man. Yeah. They used to go to the Comic-Cons, and I can't remember who was telling me this. I think my friend Justin was telling me this. They would do this thing called the Cosby Room, and they would get some super hot cosplayer into this room with these, you know, nasty old men, get them fucking right drugged up, having a good time, and just sexually abuse the shit out of them. And so when this started getting, you know, when people started getting ousted for this, like, wicked sexual abuse, just fucked up shit, I'm pretty sure the CEO stepped down. A lot of people got taken to court. Like, this shit happens. It's fucked up. Yeah. And it shouldn't be that surprising. Like,
yeah, it happens all the time, but...
yeah, it's so disturbing.
Well, and that's kind of the failings in certain parts of not just people, but I mean... I sometimes equate some of that towards religion. Yeah. But at the same token, though, too, it's like that's not really the whole thing of it, too, because there's just shitty people in the world is the other thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Like, I believe in good and evil. I believe that, you know, people can be inherently evil because they just do fucking evil fucking things, man. Yeah. Murderers who grow up like perfectly normal lives and they just end up fucking mutilating cats the one time, and then that fucking snowballs into, you know, wanting to kill people. It's like, yeah, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that's evil necessarily. That's just there's something fucking wrong with that person.
Oh yeah,
you know,
for sure there's something wrong with him. He's evil. No, I'm just
yeah, he has an evil gene. It's genetically evil.
Gene. Yeah, it's genealogical. Yeah, we can track it back. It's actually hereditary.
Yeah. Yeah, all the way back to Genghis Khan.
Yeah. That was one evil motherfucker.
Yeah. I don't know, I think Attila the Hun was worse. Yeah. Because he didn't want to... Well, I don't remember what city it was that he took over, but it's like, I'm not going to kill anybody. So he had 20,000 people buried alive.
Jesus Christ.
It's like...
I've never heard of that. That's fucked up.
Oh, it's so fucked up. Like, I mean, that's just it. Like, that's why I don't understand when people say, well, like Jordan Peterson made that point years ago too. It's just like, I don't understand when they want safe spaces, especially at a university, where you're learning about the world and its history. The world's history is a nonstop fucking bloodbath.
Oh, that's right. And he's catching flack for that. And it's like, I don't think you people really understand what he's saying here.
Yeah. It's like, safe spaces are good for certain times and places. But to say the entire university is a safe space, you might as well burn all the fucking books while you're at it then.
Yeah, you might as well.
And forget most of history, but... problem with doing that is people that forget history are doomed to repeat it. Mm-hmm. And here we are repeating history because look at the fucking shit we're doing to each other again.
Yeah, man. To expect the world to do things at your own convenience, I think, is insane. I think you kind of have to expect the world to be chaotic to begin with and understand how to fucking deal with that. Because what can you control at the end of the day? I always say this, and I've said it like 3 times already. Yeah. You can control the way that you think and the way that you act. You can focus on the things that you can control. You can... It's not unreasonable to ask for a safe space. You can have a safe space. Yeah. But you got to understand that when you're expecting people to do things to your convenience, and that, like, I'll even argue the pronouns thing. I think that's frustrating.
Actually, you know what? Get on to that. I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick.
Okay. We'll give you a sec.
Definitely don't have the Joe Rogan iron bladder yet.
So. Hold it. It's only 4 hours. Hold it in.
Yeah, so tell me your feelings on the whole gender pronouns.
Yeah, so we were just talking about the world doing things to your convenience, expecting safe spaces in places that are unreasonable.
Yeah.
And on the topic of pronouns, I think that's a little bit ridiculous for people to go out there and say they/them, she/her, he/him. Expecting people to address you as such. That's okay for maybe your friends if they meet the same ideologies that you do, but you trying to make me decide what you are, that you're infringing on my belief system. Like you coming out and telling me that, and I see you physically as a boy, that you want me to call you a girl. I don't give a fucking shit if you think that you're a girl. I'm still going to call you a boy. And it's not that I'm being insensitive towards your preference of being transsexual. That's fine with me. Be a transsexual, be gay. I really don't care. It doesn't affect me. I've had plenty of friends in the past who have been gay and trans. Yep. And that's not me pulling a card out and being like, well, I've had my card stamped. This is me. Yeah, literally. This is me saying that you're directly infringing on my beliefs when you say something like that. And I think it's utterly ridiculous for you to expect the world to allow you that little sensitive space. That has a time and a place, and it works in a certain scenario, and that's like with your friends and with people who really truly understand you. But you projecting that out into the world and people saying, did you just assume my gender? It's like, well, you are a boy, aren't you? Like, I'm looking at you here. You're a boy. Give me a name. I'll call you by that name. If you want to be Jasmine, you're Jasmine. That's great. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
But the whole, like, expecting people to be dumbed down to your level is, like,
well, I thought
unreasonable.
I was actually walking to the bathroom in Home Depot, and that's when it actually hit me, like, how dangerous that kind of thing is.
Yeah.
Because I was walking, and it's just like, right now I could walk into the women's bathroom, use it as any other woman would.
Yeah.
And say, and if anybody said a fucking thing about it, me being 250 pounds... 6'3", hair on my face and everything. It's like, no, I identify as a woman. You can't fucking say any different. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you even question me, I can charge you for it because that's a law in Canada now.
Is that a law?
And it's like, and the thing is too, it's like I can say that I sexually identify as a lesbian, so I still won't have sex with women.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
So, and nobody could fucking say a thing about that. But it's like, well, do you actually believe that? It's like, are you questioning my beliefs or my person? Like, how dare you? And that's the thing too. It's like, I could see that kind of shit happening. And it's like, it almost crossed my mind to fucking do something like that. And it's like, oh, it turns into such a fucking mess if you do something like that then too, though. It's just like, oh. But at the same time, it's like, it would kind of show the ridiculousness of what the fuck we're actually doing though at the same time. Like, and not to discount these people's lived realities and stuff like that and their confusion of the whatever it is that they're feeling because of their hormones or their genetics or the whatever's going on sort of thing like that too. Mm-hmm. But to say that there's 70 some genders, it's like, okay, but I'm a construction worker, so how many bathrooms do I have to build?
Yeah. 71 bathrooms. Like each with a framed in pocket door.
Well, yeah, like where does the line ever fucking stop then?
Yeah.
Like, and maybe this is just me being a fucking ignorant bigot of some type sort of thing too, and I'm too old to understand what it actually means, but I mean, you're 10 or so years younger than me, and it kind of seems like we're somewhat on the same page because we went to school, we understood biology, why a sperm has to impregnate an egg, and as far as we've seen in every aspect of nature, the males make the sperm, the females make the eggs. That's what makes a baby.
Yeah.
And again, it's like you can say whatever you want about pronouns or however you want to be called or whatever, and it's like, and all of us, for the most part, I think just about every one of us thinks that these people are people.
Yeah.
I understand you're a human.
And I'll address you as such.
I appreciate your human experience. It's different than mine, but it doesn't mean it's any more or less.
Yeah.
We're the same because we're human.
So don't call me transphobic.
But it's just like at the same time though too, it's like, let's not discount the entire history of life because you have a feeling about something with no actual fact to back it up. And then it's like, not only that, how does procreation happen then? Mm-hmm. How does each species perpetuate itself? Mm-hmm. You know, like, well, there's
opposites.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, there's something even like, well, seahorses, I think. They actually can switch genders depending on how many...
Seahorses? Yeah.
They can actually switch genders because of how many males or females there are. And it's like, but okay, but you understand that's not a trans. It fully switches its gender so it can actually have babies, or it can fully switch the gender to produce sperm. And
like there's a marker male. Based on, you know, something. I don't know. But yeah, they can switch.
Yeah. So it's not human. It's very different than what we are.
I think to kind of expand on what I was saying earlier too, if you look like a girl, I'm going to call you a girl. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If you look like a boy, I'm going to call you a boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could still be trans and be a biological boy and look like a girl, and I'll call you a girl. That's fine with me.
Yeah.
I'll call you by your name if you want. I won't call you a boy. But if you look like a boy and you want to be a girl, but you still look like a boy, I'm still going to call you a boy.
Yeah.
And that's not being insensitive. Like,
yeah.
To be called insensitive for that is like, give me a fucking break. I'm just supposed to know that you identify as a fucking cactus? Like, are you kidding me?
That's beyond, though. That's an actual mental issue, I think.
I wouldn't call it a mental illness. I'd call it more just, you know, maybe a cry for attention.
Yeah.
Following what people before you have done because it's trendy, trying to do things to impress people. That's more along the lines of what I'd call that.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I think there's a big part of the reason why a lot of young people are doing this is because it's the new hip thing to do. Yeah, to a degree, and how many of these people, once they hit their 40s and 50s,
I wouldn't say it's the hip thing to do, Connor.
Well, no, but don't kid yourself, because every time there's a young group of people, they always push against the parents, the authority, whatever sort of thing like that. And at some point, it was, you know, people wearing torn denim and playing rock and roll and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right? That's how they pushed against the system.
Your hair up in a mohawk and listening to
the Beatles had long, messy hair. Which you look at it now, it's like, that's the haircut was the fucking problem? Seriously? Like, you know, so it's like what we think is pushy or whatever sort of thing changes over time. You know, but, well, Jim Jeffries actually makes a really good joke about that. He's just like, this current generation is the most progressive generation in history. But what you have to realize is every new generation, it was the most progressive generation in history. You're not fucking special.
Yeah. No, we're not special. It's true.
And that's just it. And it's like, and that's what I mean when I say, like, how many of these people that are doing, whether they actually get a full-on sex change or not, but they, and not saying that there's anything wrong with cross-dressing or feeling trans one way or the other, but it's like, most of us grow out of that shit when you get older.
Yeah.
I used to have fucking tons of hats. I used to be loud and belligerent constantly.
Yeah.
Because I wanted attention. I'm a youngest in my family. I was always the performer. Part of the reason why I'm doing a podcast now, honestly.
Totally,
but it's the thing is that I also grew up, and I also knew where my lot in life was, and also knew that after a certain time, it's just like there's so much energy that you can put into being a jackass or trying to be the center of attention, where it's just like, okay, dude, it's not funny anymore, or it's not interesting, or it's not like, be more tactful. You're 30.
Yeah, you know, and to kind of oppose that, I don't think it necessarily has much to do with, you know, your sophistication and maturity as a person. If you want to choose to do that, I mean, some people literally do feel sexually like they're a woman. Some people do feel sexually like they're a man, like they want to be dominant or they want to be submissive. It can swing both ways, right?
Yep.
People kind of make their choices depending on, you know, what they like sexually. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of, you know, what were you saying earlier there about growing out of that? It's kind of like, it goes back to what you were saying about like gays not having the choice. Yeah. It's kind of like they're not making the choice. It's just, you know, who they are and what they want to be.
Yeah.
You know, that's cool with me, man. Like,
yeah. Well, that's what I mean.
Let's just be friends at the end of the day.
Yeah. But that's what I mean too. Like, and it's not everybody. Some people will have that whatever thing that they're doing and it'll be with them forever because that's truly who they are. But there's a lot of people jumping onto a bandwagon too.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people who use it as a bandwagon. And that further discredits their cause, because then you get these jackasses who pull attention away from the acceptance of the people who are, more legitimate in their cause.
Like that woman in BC that got kicked out of 4 waxing salons or whatever.
Oh, because she was a biological male, and they didn't want to touch her fucking cock.
Cock and balls.
That's
I need that waxed.
Weird to do to a fucking
salon. Your female cock and balls that these other females don't actually, genetic females that don't want to actually touch.
And then calling it transphobic, it's like, no, you're making people really uncomfortable. This isn't transphobia.
Yeah, and you're forcing your...
It's like a fat person complaining to me about being attracted to me, but me not being attracted to them. It's like... That doesn't make me fat phobic. I'm just not attracted to your form. I've met fat girls who have amazingly sexy faces.
Yeah.
That I would probably dive right into, but...
Well, and that's the other thing. Well, not even that. It's it's amazing how much personality makes the person attractive.
Yeah, man.
And how the opposite side too. It's like someone like Jessica Simpson had basically a very stereotypical hot blonde girl body.
Yeah.
But you hear her talk, and it's just like, wow, you lost a lot of attractiveness when you started talking.
Yeah.
So.
I know a guy like that. I got this friend. He's a martial artist as well. I fucking hope to God he doesn't see this, because he's probably gonna know who he is. Girls find him really attractive. He's a dumbass. He's just incredibly awkward. Super fucking awkward.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with a girl who was like, yeah, we went on a date, and this girl that I just met through a different friend of mine who coincidentally went on a date with this guy. She was like, yeah, he's pretty sexy, but weird. Too weird to want to date. Just super off-putting. It's like, yeah, I've met my fair share of people like that. That's very real.
Yeah, I get that. And that's kind of a funny thing about us as a people. I mean, there's what is attractive and stuff like that, or what people think of themselves, and they put themselves out there for things that they think that they're doing well on. And it's like, no, everybody's telling you you're doing wrong. Oh no, I'm living my truth. It's like, okay.
Or that they're not ready to be honest about.
It's like, okay, but you're not getting the response that you want and you think you are. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to tell you objectional reality.
Yeah, but I mean, they'll continue to delude.
Yeah, when these people are screaming and shouting for you to get off stage, it's not because they want you there. It's because they actually want you to leave, they're shouting about.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. God,
yeah,
that's fucking hilarious.
But I mean, it kind of goes back to that whole safe space thing where, we have these things where we have these testing areas, and as we're young in life and we're testing the world and testing ourselves and testing our boundaries and the boundaries that are set for us by other people and institutions and stuff. But it's you get so much of that, and you get, you find your identity through your gender or through your sports or through your academia or whatever it is that you find, or directly into the work world. Mm-hmm. You kind of find your place, but it's if you're going to be a loudmouth weirdo your whole life, you're only going to have a certain amount of friends, or you're only going to be able to get a certain amount of jobs.
Yeah.
And it's, and they even noticed that in chimpanzee colonies, groups, tribes, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, the same idea. If certain members are too aggressive, or they steal food or something too often, the rest of the group just shuns them.
They shun them, yeah.
And it's just but the amazing thing is that they also understand apologies and reconciliation, and they actually a lot of the time they work together. But it's some things is just no, you're too much, or you're going to get excluded, or you're going to get murdered, because they're animals. So again, there's no real level of morality to what they do.
Yeah.
So it's just it's interesting how different and yet how incredibly similar we are to a lot of the creatures on the planet, because we like to think that we're so different or above them in certain ways, but it's like we're exactly like them a lot of the time.
We are exactly like them, and to try to connect humanity from nature is it's futile. We are nature. We're a part of nature.
Everything, electronics and stuff.
Yeah, man, it's natural.
It's all natural.
This is just our brain power coming through. Yeah. I mean, it's not a terrible thing. Expecting that space for yourself and, you know, to have everybody bow to you on a whim because you want to be addressed a certain way, it's like, that's pretty unreasonable. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, is that, well, like we were saying, I mean, you should be able to be given the opportunity to test those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think everybody needs that space, and I will fight tooth and nail for everybody to have that space.
Absolutely.
I may not agree with a single fucking thing you're doing, but I think you should have the space to express it.
And you still got to understand that just because somebody tells you something doesn't mean that it's wrong or right.
Yeah.
Just because somebody has an adverse reaction to something that you're doing. I mean, as long as you're not fucking murdering babies, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're right either. You know, so you can choose to be selective with what you hear. It just depends on the kind of person that you want to be. It depends on your perspective as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think a big part of it is that everybody needs to lighten the fuck up a bit too. Yeah. Like the whole world doesn't need to be so fucking serious all the time.
Yeah, man. People gotta laugh.
We gotta take jokes and stuff. And I mean, like talking about the whole trans thing and Dave Chappelle pushing buttons and stuff like that.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But it's just
that's the point of humor, though. Humor is there to push buttons.
Well, not only to push buttons, but to bring normality back to fucking life.
Yeah. I
mean, you don't think that people coming back from war don't want to laugh?
Yeah.
That's the only thing they want to do.
That's probably, yeah.
And it's like, you know what? If somebody's got a good enough sense of humor and he's missing a leg and he's the one that gets up there and starts making jokes about losing limbs and stuff like that, good. Yeah. You know what? Good on him. Thank you for making this normal for the rest of us too, because it's like we all want to accept you as a person. We don't think you're different.
And you start to remove the anxiety. That kind of goes into. Have you read Man's Search for Meaning?
No, I heard of it.
It's a really good book. I have a copy that I'll send you home with. I hope I have my copies. Really good book. Yeah, I think I see it.
I'm more of an audiobook guy, but I'll check Audible.
It's a very short read. I'll definitely send you home with it. Really good book. This guy, Viktor E. Frankl, was a survivor of the Holocaust. He was in Auschwitz. Oh, shit. And he has seen just some of the most horrible things. I think he's long past. But he created a psychological study called logotherapy. And the main theme of logotherapy is that, I think me and you and Jen were talking about this on that hike, what immediately affects you in your day-to-day life is more likely to be the cause of certain behaviors. You know, so it kind of ties into that. And if you start to look at how you bring things to light around you, this is why I always say be super fucking honest with yourself. If you start to bring things to light around the way that you talk and act, that'll give you some freedom. If you're disgusted by the way that you look and you can openly say, fuck, I'm ugly. And in a laughing sense, in kind of a humorous sense, it doesn't have to be coming from a negative space of self-deprecation. It can be in, hey, look, I'm not very good looking. That'll really put people at ease, and it'll put yourself at ease from that anxiety of having to deal with being somebody who isn't confident in the way that they look. Yeah. And that's just one example.
But that's actually a perfect example, because it's like, I own my ugliness. Mm-hmm. And then somebody sees that and it's like, this motherfucker's confident, and that's what's attractive. I don't give a fuck what he looks like.
Exactly.
You know?
Man.
And that's almost always what it is, because I mean, anecdotally, I mean, you see that kind of stuff happen all the time, where you see this smoking hot, tight chick hanging out with this weird, gross looking dude. And it's just like, why am I jealous all of a sudden? It's like, because he's doing something
I'm sexy.
It's like, that's just it. It's like, oh wait, no, he's doing exactly what's right.
Yeah,
and he's taking care of her. He's giving her what she needs and what she wants, or anything like that. He's being a good person to her.
Yeah,
that's why he's with her.
Totally.
And I've been a shitty person, so that's why I'm single, or whatever. It's maybe not exactly that, but I mean, it's that thing. It's just like, that shouldn't be, again, it shouldn't be jealousy or what the fuck kind of thing like that. It should be appreciation. It's like, you know what, fucking good job, man.
Yeah, man.
You know what, and maybe good for her too. Maybe she's been with a bunch of buff, supposedly attractive people that treat her like shit constantly. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't give a fuck what this guy looks like. He's good.
Yeah, man.
And that's all I need. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm the asshole then.
Yeah, you piece of shit, you fucking nice guy. Yeah, fuck. You know, the exact example that he uses in the book is profusely sweating. I guess he had a client who had an issue with profusely sweating, and he found that by having the guy say, "If I were to sweat anymore, we'd be drowning in this room," drawing humor to it and directly addressing the thing that makes you anxious. Is a way better way to deal with your anxiety.
I fucking love doing that to people too.
Yeah, man.
That's actually my favorite version of comedy a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Is that like somebody will make something awkward, so I'll point it out and make it super awkward.
Yeah.
But then we all just like that moment of silence, and then we all fucking laugh, or it's just like we're all aware of it, and it's like, okay, are we just going to move on with the day now?
Yeah.
Like, who gives a shit?
Because you made it super awkward, it actually made it funny.
It's like we're all aware of what's going on, right? Like, let's just move on with life.
Yeah,
like,
and it doesn't necessarily have to be humor to be able to use logotherapy properly. I mean, it's a big field of study. Like, there's a lot of people who are still involved in logotherapy. Personally, I haven't read any other books aside from Man's Search for Meaning, and it kind of goes off on a tangent like halfway through the book into this logotherapy thing.
Okay.
Where the story just kind of cuts off and goes into logotherapy. But really interesting study to deal with what's directly affecting you in your day-to-day life, as opposed to looking back at your past and trying to say that, well, you ate a watermelon seed on the 26th of July in 1996, and that's the reason why you went out and stabbed a homeless guy behind 7-Eleven,
cause and effect doesn't seem to line up there.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not to discredit modern psychiatry, almost lost the word there, and psychology. It's just an alternative, and an alternative that I find works for me. So I apply it to the way that I think,
Yeah.
It makes more sense. I can only blame my past for so long.
Yeah, well, and the other part is living in the past is dwelling on something that can't be changed anyways. Mm-hmm. And you sit there with frustration and resentment and stuff, and it's like, well, it's never going to change. It can't. Yeah. Same thing as you live too far in the future. It's like, well, you're anxious about what's going to happen and things you can't control because they haven't happened yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what Eckhart Tolle talks about, is like that book, The Power of Now.
Who, sorry?
Eckhart Tolle.
Eckhart Tolle?
Power of Now? Power of Now. It's a fucking interesting book because it kind of just really dives into the now is all we have. This very second, right now. Because that second that I just said we have, this second's gone now. And I can't change what I just said a moment ago. That's beyond me, right? I don't know what I'm going to say next, but it's like everything that we do doesn't matter because right now, right this second is all we have, right? So again, like you think of the future and of things that you can't control or can't really, you can kind of prepare somewhat for them. But to live in the future isn't helping you right now. Right? And the same thing, like the past has already happened. It's unchangeable. Move on from it. Learn from its lessons, but don't stay there. Right? Like it's...
Yeah, because you can control what you think and say right now in this very moment.
Yeah, and it's an interesting book, and there's even parts of it where he starts talking about you are not your mind. And it's like, what the fuck? And exactly.
Tell me more.
It's such a weird way of looking at things from what I understand of what reality is. It's like, well, how does that make any sense? It's like, well, no, your mind is a computer. It's a processing engine. It's a comparison engine. Mm-hmm. That's not who you are, though.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute. And then I listened to that chapter, and then I had to listen to it again. And then even on certain parts of it, there's other people that ask kind of certain questions about the topics he's talking about, and he kind of gets into what it is that he's talking about even further, sort of thing. And that whole idea, it's like, well, how does that make sense that you're not your mind? And it's like, well, it's something that you store information with. It's something that you solve problems with. It's a tool, but it's like it's a tool. It's not who you are. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh.
It's separate from...
And it's like, and you think about it, your body exchanges all of its atoms out about every 7 years.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So it's like, you are the same person, but you're a different person every 7 years too. Right? So it's like, how much of any of this actually stays consistent? Mm-hmm. Right? It's like, when we die, is it completely gone? Is it because there's that 21 grams. It's unexplainable that everybody loses when they die.
Yeah, the supposed 21 grams, yeah.
The idea, or whatever that is, sort of thing like that too. But it's like, can you copy a mind? Is that possible even? Like, you can't just take a snapshot. I don't think that would work. Like, it's an interconnected
So this is
machine.
dealing in your consciousness as a separate thing from your mind.
Your
mind just simply being
your consciousness,
a vessel for your consciousness.
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah, and it's kind of and it pulls it, well, and that's the other thing too, is like your brain and your mind, or who you are, like your physical brain and who you are different things. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, because we are greater than the sum of our parts. So it's like, yeah, and then, well, the thing is too, it's like, for most of what's sitting and running through this basement, there's a lot of organic material that's almost exactly what we are. But you and I are
pretty much. Yeah.
But you and I are conscious and sentient. Why? What is that?
We got lucky,
right? Right, and that's such a weird thing to think of. It's just like, well, atoms had to take so long and combine exactly a certain way, and for all we know, maybe it took the 13.7 billion years for this conversation to happen. Mm-hmm. Maybe this will never happen again. Maybe it's happening 8 billion light years that way, on exactly the same planet, in exactly the same moment.
Yeah.
We don't know. Right? But it's at the same time, it's like, well, isn't all of this kind of interconnected then too? And then
I hope it is.
Right, and that's kind of gets back into that whole psychedelic thing that we were talking about too. It's just like, well, how far does your consciousness go? Like, what are we as a...
Where does it come from?
Exactly.
You always got to ask yourself that question. Like,
yeah,
when you look at the people around you and you see, familiar or unfamiliar faces, there's something to that kind of inherent feeling that you get by looking at a certain person's face and just, being able to understand who they are and how they feel. I think it's because our interconnectedness goes so much further back into whatever's outside of this, that we all do come from the same place, and we're essentially all the same consciousness. Yeah. I mean, I strongly believe in interconnected consciousness. I think that we're basically all our own gods. Yeah.
Well, did you see that Kurzgesagt in a nutshell? They do... It's a little bit different than the videos they do, but it's a story written by another person that they make into like a 7-minute video.
I don't think I've seen that.
And it's called The Egg.
Oh, I've watched it. I don't remember it.
Yeah. But it's basically the idea that this person dies in a car crash, fatal crash, instantly dies, sort of thing like that, meets God. It's like, oh, you're God. It's like, sure, from your point of view, that's good enough. Yeah, I'm God. And it's like, okay, so like, what is this? It's like, oh, don't worry about that. It's like, you've been here countless times already, and it's like, if you stayed here long enough, you'd remember everything, but you're not really ready to be here yet. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to send you back into a Chinese peasant woman's body in 544. What? It's like, you're going to put me through time, and like backwards in time? It's like, well, from your perspective, I guess, yeah, it would seem like time travel, but your version of what you understand of reality isn't really what's happening. It's like, okay, but well, then if I'm going back, then where's everybody else? It's like, well, this is nobody else. This is your universe. What do you mean? It's like, oh, well, every life that is human, you're going to live all of them, mm-hmm. all the way from the beginning to the end of human existence. You're going to live all those lives. And once you do, then you'll be the egg, and you'll be ready to be born into my universe where the rest of my kind are, because you're just the seed of what my kind of consciousness is. So it's like, every nice thing you do, every horrible thing you do, you're doing it to yourself.
Yeah.
And it's just like, holy fuck.
That's fucking mind-blowing, and it's hard to wrap your head around it.
Yeah.
Have you seen The Midnight Gospel? It's a podcast with Duncan Trussell.
Oh, okay, yeah. I saw some of the cartoon stuff that they put on Netflix.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's only like 10 episodes, but there's one episode, I can't remember who he's interviewing, but they go into kind of the karmic crisis of your consciousness, and how Hinduism and Buddhism kind of try to explain basically what's happening to you. Mm-hmm. And so there's this prisoner. The episode is this prisoner who's stuck in this cell, and every time he dies, he reverts to the exact same position that he was in, stuck in this cell with his tongue bitten off. He can't talk. And there comes a point in the episode where, after several attempts to escape this prison cell, he starts looking at his fellow prisoners as himself, and then he starts to understand, well, that is me, so I need to do everything that I can to get me out of here. And, you know, if you start to look at the world around you like that, I think that's where you start to kind of peel away the greed and start to be a lot more vulnerable to the people around you, because then you can hope and pray that other people, you know, do think like you, and other people are willing to be kind to unkind people. Yeah. And I kind of took that episode to heart, because like that blew me away, first of all. And I'd never really toyed with an idea where your karmic reincarnation can determine, you know, the person that you are, and how many times you're going to have to die in the same manner, in, you know, absolute agony, to be able to see beyond the veil and see the world around you as, you know, the same consciousness, and the people around you as the same consciousness. Yeah. I know I sound fucking batshit right now.
No, that's actually almost right in the same line that the egg story is, because it's that's the idea that it's your universe. It's like, yeah, everything you've done, and you've done it to yourself. Like, you were Gandhi, you were Hitler, you were the person that helped the old lady across the street, you're the person that pushed the old lady into traffic. Yeah, you're all of those. You were the old lady that got helped and pushed.
And, I mean, this is part of the reason why I believe in good and evil too, is because we make evil decisions, and to me, it's not so hard to believe that we're capable of the most heinous murder and the most beautiful miracle at the same time. Yeah, it's just kind of like the duality of man. It's just kind of the way that humanity's made to be, and there's really no disturbing that natural ebb and flow of, you know, good versus evil. That kind of feeds into Hinduism a lot. They believe that, you know, you're not supposed to interfere with the natural way of things, because the universe is self-balancing. It corrects itself automatically. Yeah.
But again, it's that point of balance.
Yeah.
Because you can't, you don't even know what good is if there is no bad.
Yeah.
Right. So
exactly. So your comparison is to what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like the idea of goodness being so good that they don't even see the bad, and then good gets taken over by bad. Mm-hmm. You know, but bad is being so terrible that it actually eats its own tail and ends itself too.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like too much of either way is not good, and that's kind of the constant torment I think we play around with in our own minds, sort of thing too. But it's like, it's super fucking easy to be a bad person.
It's super easy to be a bad person.
Yeah.
It's hard to be a good person.
but the thing is, I can go to bed comfortably.
Yeah.
Being a good person.
Yeah.
Right.
You can still go to bed comfortably being a bad person too.
Well, you can.
Some people do. It depends what your idea of going to bed sound
asleep is too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But and that's, I guess, its own thing. But that's just it. I mean, I enjoy the struggle, I think, to a degree, because I think that's kind of what defines us as a human. Mm-hmm. Is that we almost all wear our pain as badges of honor.
Yeah, absolutely. And our traumas go with us everywhere. Even it's like programmed into the things that we do and the way that we act and our reactions to things. Like, it's crazy if you take a step back and start to ask yourself why you do certain things. Because then, like, it can feed back into your trauma.
Yeah.
I see a lot of that in myself, and it's, like, hard to avoid. Because, once again, it's like blaming your past actions on what you do now, and it's like a way of absolving responsibility. So I try so fucking hard not to do that. It also doesn't fit my belief I lost the fucking word for it.
Well, kind of and I understand, like, well, it's even something that's just self-improvement, or like, how do I optimize myself to be the best version of me that I can be?
Yeah.
How am I best functional? And that kind of changes day to day. You know, like if I had a good sleep, it's like, do you even give a shit about being a good person? I'm just going to do what I need to and go home. Because it's like, I played too many video games last night or whatever. I didn't get a good sleep or drank too much or whatever. I was out banging somebody all night, and it's just like, I feel great, but I'm fucking wrecked now.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, so I kind of get that idea too, but I mean, I also had my own addiction problems and whatever family issues and stuff that had come up, and I really got hard into the Shaolin kind of ideals of thinking and calming myself down, and I learned so much about myself.
Yeah.
But then I started going into this calm, like almost Buddhist type of life, and then it's just like, I'm a fucking boring person now. Like, there's nothing that's like edgy or dirty, or not even dirty necessarily, but there's no grit or nothing unexpected for me anymore. Like, I became very boring and predictable, and it's just like, okay, now I've gone too far the other way, so I need to.
I mean, that's okay.
But it was good. It was a good peel back, because I needed to take a step back and calm the fuck down for a while too. So
yeah,
it was good. But it's like, again, because I went too far one way, and then I went too far the other way. And now I got to find that balance where it's like, okay, this is me as authentic as Connor can be now.
Totally. And I've heard people say that Buddhism's useless for exactly that, because it takes away your humanity and it makes you something that you're just not supposed to be. You turn into a robot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't have to be a good Buddhist practitioner to be a Buddhist.
Well, and enlightenment, I don't think, is exactly the same thing for everybody. I don't know how it could be. Mm-hmm. We all live different lives and learn different lessons at the different times.
Yeah. So, I'd hope it wouldn't look the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, right?
Because it's like, yeah, like if you were to imagine yourself as an enlightened being, like, I guess essentially godlike, or whatever you want that to look like.
Yeah. Well, I think the idea too is that there's probably lots of ways to get there.
Yeah.
And none of them are the wrong way, but the end point is what's important.
This is Jordan. Hi, Jordan.
Right on. But I mean, yeah, what is it to be human, right? So we each have our own versions of it and like to point the fingers at each other, but
Yeah, I mean, we could let go of it. We could see ourselves in each other making these choices and understand why we make these choices. And I mean, like I was saying earlier, like, it's you got to be able to look at yourself and see why somebody would do something. Like, put yourself in Hitler's shoes and understand why he would do that, and then you can start to kind of fully understand evil and good.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is too is that I don't think Hitler thought himself as an evil person at all.
Yeah, I don't think he did, even though he was heinous as shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the funny thing too, because Hitler's always seems to be the standard of what's bad in the world. But it's like, I mean, are we going by numbers? Because there's a lot of other people that killed way more people than he did.
Yeah, it's true.
So
yeah, it's very
is
true.
it the level that he did it or the way he did it was wrong, or like what are we comparing about? And not to say that one evil is more evil than the other evil. Like it's all pretty fucking terrible stuff. But at the same token, though, too, it's like, well, how do we allow these things to happen? You know, because as Germany's sitting now, they're talking about throwing out the Nuremberg Code because they want to force vaccinations on people.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's almost laughable, because it's like, well, the last time we sat around, everybody knows what happens, and now we're trying to stand up for ourselves, and that's wrong too. It's like, can't win for trying here.
Yeah, I mean, without drawing the correlation to Nazi Germany, yeah, like, we need to be given the choice.
Yeah.
And so, like, the whole schism there, I think people got to understand that we're all going to be fundamentally different. And realistically, I'm not against vaccines.
No, I'm not either. They've saved, well, I'm alive because of them, I'm sure.
Yeah, me too, right? Like fucking polio.
I shot myself with enough nails. I needed a tetanus booster. So
tetanus shots. Yeah, I've stepped on my fair share of rusty nails.
Yeah.
What was I saying? As far as the vaccines go, I think if I wasn't forced into a position, I think this is probably the way a lot of people feel. If they weren't forced into this position to have to make this decision, they'd probably freely do it of their own will. But since people are going to make decisions based on principle, which is kind of what I based my ideas on,
yeah.
I'm going to stand against it just out of principle.
Well, it honestly feels like a pissed off parent talking to children.
Exactly.
You do this. Why? Because. Why? Yeah. Because. Well, then it just turns into a why because fight.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like, I'm not a child and the government's not my parent.
I was trying to avoid this conversation, but yeah, I was trying so hard to avoid this topic. But then it turns into people painting each other with the same paintbrush. So they're going to assume that, and this is so going to get you canceled, they're going to assume that because I say I'm not going to do this out of principle, that I must think the exact same way that every other Trudeau-hating conservative does.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so now I've been painted with a broad stroke, and I'm dead to them.
Yeah.
I've unfollowed countless people on Facebook because they share these ideas.
Yeah.
And they want that divisiveness. And then there's a group of people who are fighting against the divisiveness, but still want to stand by their nature and their beliefs and say, this isn't okay to force me into this decision. Yeah. I'm still going to stand by my beliefs because that's who I am as a virtuous person.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, if people can't understand that, that's okay. I'm not going to attack you for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would just like there to be, well, this type of open kind of conversation with it.
Yeah. But there should be a space for us to be able to talk about it.
But
without attacking each other.
But it's gotten to be such a mess with so many different aspects and so many different details that everybody can have 100 different opinions on each one of them.
Yeah.
Like it's gotten to the point where there's no simple solution anymore.
Whether it's backed by science or somebody's political beliefs.
Well, yeah, and then science has become irrelevant on the topic.
It kind of has, yeah. Because, I mean, we can switch the statistics any which way we want.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sucks because, I mean, you and I could talk about it. I could talk about it to doctors or whatever, professionals and stuff like that. None of it ever changes. Nothing's ever going to move the fucking needle.
Yeah.
Because there's just, well, it's like an atheist and a religious person trying to argue.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing you can say that's ever going to change my mind to believe in God and vice versa.
Exactly. I always draw that correlation right there.
It's like you believe
versus a Muslim.
Yeah, it's like I don't even want to try to talk to you about religion. It's like you believe it, so that's your thing. But don't try to force me into that.
Exactly.
So,
trying to force me into it's just going to create resentment. Like,
yeah.
If anybody's listening to this right now, I hope to God they've read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, because he touches on that a lot. And he talks a lot about how to not coax people into making decisions, how to, you know, help people make the right decision for themselves without creating resentment.
Yep.
And a lot of the time, I would say more often than not, it's agreeing to disagree and saying we're fundamentally different and we probably aren't going to come to an agreement.
And that should be okay.
And that should be okay. I should still be able to be on my side of the fence and not have to fucking duck from rocks. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, that's not the way of the world right now either, because there's, even if there was, well, like anything, I mean, there is no apology that's accepted anymore.
Yeah.
Right? There's no way of taking anything all the way to conclusion saying this is without a question how everything and everybody should see it this way.
Yeah.
And it could almost be on every topic, because it's like some people argue with you just because they like to argue.
Yeah, yeah, they will. Yeah, like my brother-in-law is just like that. He just loves to argue, and it's fun having political conversations with him because he loves to argue. I try to stay out of it when it gets political, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
but it can be fun because he fights tooth and nail.
Yeah, well, I actually love being devil's advocate. Like I'll go against my own beliefs sometimes, just so it's like, how can you say that? It's like, no, I agree with what you're saying, but I want you to be able to back up what you're saying.
Yeah,
and if I can shoot holes through what you're saying really easily, you don't know what you're talking about very well.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah,
you kind of have to be your own worst critic.
Yeah, and that's what I love about having such a great access to information.
Yeah,
is that anytime I have a thought about something, I start feeling emotional or passionate about something, it's like that's emotion. What's the logical part of this?
Let's detach from that. Yeah.
Who's arguing with this? Who's saying something else? Now let's look at their side. Who else is saying stuff about this? Is there more than just the two sides? Is there 3 or 4 sides even?
Yeah. Man.
Like how many ways can this be looked at it, sort of thing. And that's why I would far prefer to have a larger open conversation with these things, and like I said before, with the whole egalitarianism, why a group of people will make better decisions than a single person ever could.
Yeah. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, it's slower and it takes a longer process. But I mean, if we're talking about big things that are going to affect a lot of people's lives, it should take time.
Totally.
Right? But I don't know. There I go thinking again. I'm going to get myself in trouble.
Cancelled! That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, we're 3 hours in, man.
Are we actually?
For real.
Holy shit.
There's probably a few minutes over on the start, but yeah, we're
gnarly.
2 hours and 59 minutes exactly right
Hell
now. So.
Yeah. Way to give me a platform. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Awesome.
Let's wrap her up and we'll call it an evening at, 9:37.
Yeah, okay.
Bangarang, Rufio.
Dude, that's awesome. Thank you so much.